speakers, Mr. Amit Mahajan, founder and CEO, the Phoenix Group and Bitmapper Integration Technologies. Dr. Shirish Ravan, founder, Earthside Foundation and Development Technologies Accelerator. Dr. Kshitij Mal, postdoctoral research associate, Center for Integrated Systems in Aerospace, Purdue University. He would be joining us online. Mr. Anirudh Rastogi, founder and managing partner, Ikigai Law. And the session moderator once again, Dr. Chaitanya Giri, Space Fellow, Observer Research Foundation, Advisory Board Member, SIA India. Chaitanya, I hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we'll have to speak loudly, a bit loudly, so that people from outside can come and walk in, that they know that there is a program going on. Hello. Okay, fantastic. So we are here a bit late for the second session, which is known as the International Perspective on Deep Tech and Space Tech Development. And when it comes to international development, we are all talking about linkages that are secure, business linkages that are secure, business linkages that are productive, business linkages that are profit making, business linkages that help the diplomatic relations between India and the country of interest in the case of that particular project, or that particular, if it is multilateral, then it would be countries. So there are a lot of things which go on, and it's a multi-stakeholder approach in here. So we are not only talking about a company and it's maybe the selling partner or the JV partner or a subsidiary which is located somewhere else, but we are also talking about how diplomacy comes into play. Because when you talk about deep tech, space tech, defense tech, it all comes under the purview of export controls. So there are export controls to be met. Many a times when the word export control comes up, we usually talk about United Nations. We talk about the American export control, but we rarely talk about our own export control, which is COMET. So in this session, we'll be pointing at many aspects. We have a United Nations veteran in Dr. Shirish Ravan. We have a big player in the defense industry. Big for us because he's been the closest to us for quite some time, number one. Number two is he's wearing multiple hats. So Amit Mahajan. Then we have Kshitij Mal, and I just came to know from General Panu that Kshitij has been working on some interesting project and I should connect with him. So Kshitij, I'll connect with you later on. And who else? Yes, the most important person on the panel, which is a lawyer. Lawyer is somebody who all the stakeholders would need. So everybody needs their consultation, and I think the ubiquitous stakeholder in this entire exercise is always a lawyer, and we have a great person here, Anirudh from Ikigai Law. He's come all the way from Delhi to just discuss with you what could be done in the near future on all these aspects. So firstly, I'll move on to Shirish sir, you. He'll bring a very unique aspect. I'll let him speak about it.
Right. Speaking from here is okay, right? Yeah. So, good afternoon. We know it's 3 hours delay, but I think that shows that we are deep into the discussion, and being the first event of such kind, I think this is quite needed in Pune, in Maharashtra. So yeah, my name is Shirish Ravan, and I was with United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, which is headquartered in Vienna, for 14 years, and probably the only Indian professional who has worked in Office for Outer Space Affairs. And before that I was also UN Office for Drugs and Crime, and I landed up in Afghanistan through that office, and I monitored entire opium cultivation and counter narcotic activities for 4 years. And then again, yeah, Outer Space Affairs was my long career. So I would like to bring perspective, as the topic says, it is about international perspective of space tech. And the community is mostly also of interest of defense, not just the civil application. So I thought of a topic on disaster management, and just give you a little bit of how this international cooperation or space diplomacy works internationally, to which India is also a big contributor. And then what are the limitations that I saw when I traveled to almost 75 countries supporting the program called UN Spider, that is the United Nations platform for space-based information for disaster management and emergency response. I was global coordinator of that particular program that took me around supporting disasters in many countries. So taking example of that, I would probably throw some light on the topic that is given for this particular session. So as you know that in Asia, we have only, you can count 4 countries that have good space technology. That is India, Japan, China, and you can say South Korea, which are really into something. But disasters are not looking at it. I mean, disaster can happen anywhere. So how to really monitor those disasters, how to assess the damage? And there is no better way than the Earth observation for monitoring those disasters, and also no better way than the satellite communication. And if out of 65 Asian countries, only 4 countries have the Earth observation capabilities, it can be a big, handicap for rest of the countries. So how to do that? So here comes into picture the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs and forms in its 3rd global space conference in 19. And there are only 4 global conferences have happened so far in the world. They are called Unispace conferences, 68, 82, 99, and after that we said 2018 we did Unispace plus 50. So 99th this thing, 3rd Unispace conference, there was an idea launched that is called establishing the International Charter Space and Major Disaster, to which India became a contributor. So what happens that disaster happened. So I just take a live example. In 2015 disaster happened in Nepal. It was a massive disaster. So being a UN Spider program and they don't know space anything, I get a call, disaster has happened, please help. So being a member and also contributor to charter, I activate the charter. It means all the major space agencies in the world, including ISRO, sets their satellites. So first thing they do is they provide the archives of all the areas of interest that we got from Nepal. So Nepal gives me only the latitude, longitudes tentatively. So first they get the archives so that pre-disaster situation is already available to people, and not only the Nepal as a country or stakeholder there, but also to the world, because world is now looking at that and they want to also know what has happened and how we can help. And then evening the tasking is the next morning, whichever satellites are there, they will procure, that is post-disaster images. And they keep on coming. And there is an entire chain that this is one of the most successful international cooperation working from the day of inception 2005 until today, International Charter Space and Major Disaster. And then lots of maps are being prepared. Initially maybe the cloud data, or then more of an overview, and then gets into very details and all kind of things. So it feels very nice that every disaster is covered. Even when Wayanad, recently this landslide happened, charter was activated. Although India has satellite, they are not enough. So we get help from other satellites in this case. Now come to our topic. Why I took this example. So what are the handicaps? Now entire world is giving you satellite images. You should be able to see the disasters very, very well. And you should save the lives. In reality what is happening, the images, by the time you procure the images, by the time you make sense of that images, you lose 3 to 4 days. Because I went to so many countries and I assessed these particular things as a part of your Spider. So they say, yeah, we get maps and we get data and all that. Downloading terabytes of data in our countries in Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Fiji and Samoa. We don't have infrastructure. Then somebody sends us PDF maps, which you can't put onto this thing in the system. And by the time we get maps, mostly we know the things. The work is already started. Because NDRF also is linked to you, so I'm getting example. So what happens is, such a wonderful mechanism is not effectively contributing just because there is no use of deep tech has been made into it. But when satellite images were dumped in Nepal, all they said, and there is a very good organization called EC Mode, which has fantastic expertise. Luckily in Nepal, there is no other organization which can handle that kind of images or download that. They say it is all debris of images full of clouds, and to find the image which is cloud free took us 1 week. Then you make map and you give those maps, and by that time they say thank you so much, the force has already gone and done the work. This is the naked truth happens on the ground. Another thing happen is when we go and say, okay, how was the map, did you use it? They say, yeah, map was okay, but airport was not here really, because some map has been prepared somebody in Geneva or somewhere. It is not prepared in our own country. So all these things are happening only because you don't have the onboard processing to give the ready to use images, and this is where large efforts have to go on to really give images immediately for the ready to use purpose, at least for life saving and the military use, which is really lacking in most of these current satellites as well. And also another thing is that making sense out of it. Like when big earthquake or something happened, hundreds of volunteers come and make map and all that. Automation of all those kind of things so that you just run. And another important thing is why I worked a lot with the NDMA last 1 year with member secretary and all that. The common thing is that their focus is mostly onto their own domain. We can't force them to learn AI, ML, image processing, all that. They need something very, very simple. So that they can simply converse or they can simply run one model, they can get what they wanted through AI, ML analysis, which is not been done. So what happens is effectively they say, thank you, we got the images, we will use that in the report. It is not being used too much on the ground. And this is where I think we are lacking, and the role has to be played very, very well. Now just coming to my last point, from disaster, if I come to agriculture insurance, civilian uses like agriculture insurance, or each village that makes a village development plan, which is a basic unit in India, they should make a plan based on the geographic data and understand geology, agriculture, water situation, drought, food security, and make a plan. None of it is happening in any of the GPDP, Gram Panchayat development plan in India. We have started working with them, and one thing we realized, in order to make them use, these leaders to use this data to make a right plan to develop villages, districts in right way, they need a very, very simple system, not the difficult. Other they don't look at it. And my simple question to you, which car is very, very easy to drive? Everyone said Tesla, right? You don't have to drive Tesla, you just sit and car drives by itself. Tesla uses very high technology to make driving the most simplest act. This is what is needed in our areas, that in space, whatever earth observation data you do, if you want to make it very useful and make it to grassroots interventions, which has not happened in 30-40 years, no Sarpanch, no Jilla Parishad Sadasya, no MLA knows about potential of this particular technology, just because we have not made that very easy. And now the time has come with development of AI, ML and all deep kind of things. Now is the time we must do, and we should not miss that particular bus. I think that is the thought I wanted to put it here. Thank you.
You know, the wide open eyes that I saw listening to you were because, number one, that you were speaking something that is immediately relevant to all of us. All of us are connected to our towns and villages in a very big way. Emotionally, we know the ground situation. In many cases, when disaster strikes, it is the remote areas, the rural areas which get disconnected. And while you were talking about Nepal, I recollected what General Pannu had last time mentioned about his experience in Nepal. You know, that was a hair-raising experience, and perhaps in the interest of the audience, I'd like him to speak on these matters.
The Nepalese government invited us to come to Nepal in the month of February 2015, and MEA nominated me as head of the delegation. We landed up in Kathmandu, and then they gave us helicopters and planes, and we traveled lengths and breadths of Nepal. So we initially wrote an understanding. They said the tectonic plates are shifting. They told us we are expecting a major earthquake in Nepal. And then we concluded by saying, please give us a hazard map. It so happened that 25th or 26th May was a weekend. And we were having an Army Commanders Conference in the MO Directorate, and I was in the office. Normally Saturday, one normally doesn't go, but I was in the office because the Army Commanders Conference was happening there. We had a tea break. I by chance went to my office, switched on the TV, and the news was there that Nepal has been hit at the Richter scale of some 8 point something. And it so happened, my officer came and stood in front of me. He says, sir, the hazard map has come from Nepal. I said, not required, it's already unfolded. By chance, we had the entire Indian Air Force ready for an exercise to drop a para brigade in Rajasthan. By chance. So we had all the hotlines ready with Nepal as it is and with the Air Force. So I picked up and the AVM was told, destination Nepal. pick up the paratroopers from Agra, but not the paratrooper battalion, fighting battalions. You will pick up the field ambulance and you will pick up engineer units and drop them in Kathmandu. India was fastest in giving this response. Within 2 hours, Indian help reached Nepal. Now, I had no idea that anybody is working on satellites. I had no idea whether Nepal used the satellite imagery for building their hazard map. I had no idea. What we were getting is from the ground, and what was also lacking on ground is SATCOM. Areas we could not reach, nobody was communicating. We had to actually fly in some
मुझे अभी भी आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
equipment. So as a result, I think it's a great point that you have made. At least you can build a hazard map for India.
मैं एक बार
At least you can build hazard map for our neighboring countries where India will be a first responder. The NDRF should have a satellite-based hazard map prepared already, because the way the geography changes, the
अभी आप कुछ
detection
बोलेंगे तो
will
शायद
tell you
check कर
what
सकते
shifts
हैं.
are taking place. So I think it's a great thing for the future that we've gone through this experience ourselves.
Can I just add one more point? When we are talking of hazard map, one has to learn from each other. Now, people, if I mention Arunachal Pradesh, they'll say, वहाँ पे क्या हो रहा होगा? But let me tell you, about 5 or 6 years back, Anand Technologies was preparing a detailed report for Arunachal Pradesh with 3 clear
मुझे
parameters.
कोई भी आवाज नहीं आ रही
And
है.
this is
ना
the
वीडियो
point I'm
दिख रहा है
bringing
ना आवाज आ
about
रही है.
for governance.
Right now.
Not wasting money and building infrastructure in areas which are landslide prone, in areas which are earthquake prone, and areas which are flood prone. So whether you take it as an offshoot of hazard map,
आप एक
but
बार
finally the
इनपुट
government should
ऑडियो
not
चेक
be
कर सकते
wasting
हैं
money
अपने end पे?
building
क्योंकि मेरे
and
end
then
पे
doing
तो बराबर
relief
दिख रहा है
work
मुझे.
and then rehabilitation. What
Like I
nonsense.
can see
I think
my input is my
you
mic
added
and
very
the
relevant
output
point.
is
So
the
I will just
speaker of my computer,
build
so
in
I should be
2
able to
minutes
hear
onto
what
that.
unsure what's
So all disaster management worldwide, including India, is driven by something called Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, just like SDGs. We played a major share in bringing, if you download that document, which is guiding document for all the 193 countries, you will see a lot of text about Earth observation, evidence-based data, and geospatial, and a lot of countries that developed their strategies based on Sendai now included this use of this one. So in that there is one important thing what you said is reiterated again and again, is that multi-hazard risk assessment is one of the thing in the Sendai priority, and multi-hazard early warning system. But 2015 that came into existence, mid-term analysis happened, now we are 2024, but not many countries including India has the multi-hazard early warning assessment. So hopefully now I have come back and I have started pitching to different state governments, and hopefully we will get some success to show one state as an example of multi-hazard risk assessment, multi-hazard early warning system, and then establish the infrastructure. And we have an organization in India that is hosted, truly international organization. It's called Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI. Literally paid in dollars to hundreds of staff there. So that much importance India has given internationally to building the resilient disaster resilient infrastructure. But in practice, we don't have those assessment, and hopefully things will change. At my organization foundation level, I'm trying to do that, and with all of support of you, maybe we can proceed further. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. So, lot of diplomacy, lot of multilateral diplomacy, lot of sharing of data. When cooperation doesn't work at bilateral level or multilateral, plurilateral level, it is the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs which has been responsible for some of the most successful of the international treaties. And not all UN bodies can boast of that, sort of record. Let me move to Amit. Amit, you wear multiple hats. You have a civilian side of your company. You have a military side of your company. And when you deal with both the sectors across countries, how is your experience? Please tell our audience.
Thanks. Thank you for having me here. It's a great honor. So there are a lot of challenges when you are working both on the civilian side and the military side. So I think there is a restricted side and the unrestricted side. The ability to innovate and the ability to create on the civilian side is far more open than it is on the military side. And I'll use a couple of examples for this. On the military side, it is impossible to have a very large gun, a 155 millimeter howitzer, like a Bofors, in your backyard, right? So we make robots that clean it or examine it. It's impossible to go in and find that gun or use that article to test your products that you create or your innovations that you would create. So access is extremely important, and that is there. But I think the more important part is selection of the best grade components and selection of the best grade materials to create a difference in your products and make it the world class products. So we are trying to, at this point in time, our companies build products. We are one of the 4 companies in the world that are building some of these products. So that's where we operate in. Apple is one of our biggest customers in this space, and there are other large carriers like AT&T. They use us. In that case, we don't compromise. We don't compromise on quality. We don't compromise on cost. We are only caring about building the best of the best of the best in the world. We file patents, and that's why we win those patents. We get those patents. I think we need to talk a little bit, and I'm probably digressing from a topic a little bit here, if you would afford me. But I feel that where we have this whole L1 issue, it stops us from creating the best. We want to create the best thing for the warfighter. We want to create the best possible cameras that are there for the warfighter. We want to bring the best possible detectors that are available in the world, and we are able to do that. I mean, I think, we talked about international trade, right? And it kind of touches upon the whole ITAR and access and deniability of, or denial of technology from some countries to India. When we are getting the access, we are unable to procure it because of the cost. Because I'll give you an example. There is a detector, there is a thermal detector which is the best in the world. If I want to get that detector today, it is going to cost me 1.5 to 2 crores. Just one chip is going to be 1.5 to 2 crores. Now, once we build the entire article on top of that, that is going to be somewhere between 6 and 8 crores, which is about $1 million. I won't find anybody in India who will be willing to buy it. I'll find it in US, I'll find it in Europe, I'll find it in, space coalition around the world. We'll buy that. But that's the challenge. I think, so I feel that ITAR, although is there in terms of, blockages, or there are others as well, there are ways and means to get around it. So the civilian side of our business is enabling us to work on the defense side by allowing us to explore these other technologies. We build products and services on the civilian side, and then we try to map them out onto the military side and bring that in. The other interesting thing that I feel that is, while I try to balance it, is we try to make sure that we have compartmentalization in terms of intellectual property. Things that we build for India should remain in India. Things that we build for India's defense ecosystem have to remain over here, and they should not get inadvertently exported out to the rest of the world. And similar has to happen between extra things that we do for US or for the European countries, bringing that back into India. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's that's where I am. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Amit. So, to make a bit more provocative statement that what Amit made, I'll go on to say that if we continue with L1, now this is a sort of a warning that I am giving to the entire ecosystem, that if we continue with our fascination for L1, then we'll surely have a Make in India, we'll surely have a Make in India for the world, but in between these words, Make in India, Make for the world, it will become Make only for the world and not for yourself. Because your ecosystem will then start manufacturing for the markets who are more receptive to their products, who clear their products very easily, the compliance clearance or the trade clearances. And top of that, the Indian companies will get a much larger market elsewhere, and this will end to become only a global, capability center, which is of no purpose, serving no purpose for Indian needs. So that L1 is a big impediment. It has been a point of ridicule for a very long time, but that ridicule is going to get converted into a threat. I'm not I'm not talking about Amit's company as such, but there is one very celebrated startup that I know of. I won't name it, but you have it. They
We have finally figured a few things out in our business, where the civilian business is allowing us to train our engineers and make our engineers far superior and operate at the world level, and then we are taking those engineers and deploying them on our defense business, military business, and with a with a lot of desh bhakti in our heart, trying to give back to the nation. And I think that is the path that we are on, and I feel that is the balance that is helping us. It enables us in couple of also other ways. We are based in US, so we are registered with the US government, Department of Commerce. We buy ITAR specific products sometimes out of US, and we export them to India, and we declare it openly. Okay, I'm a US citizen, I'm an overseas citizen of India, both. Okay, and I'm proud of it, right? And I wear it openly, I don't hide it. And while I do that, when we buy detectors, thermal detectors for our thermal cameras, these are restricted. But we file for licenses with Department of Commerce. We declare on those licenses that these will go for security forces in India. This will go to Ministry of Defense in India, and we export it, and we get those licenses. So it is possible to do this, and having the whole commercial and the professional and the military side of the business enables us to do that. It gives us the confidence to operate in that and do that. And I feel if we do it above the board, if we do it properly, it will take time. But if we do it above the board, if we do it properly, we can then operate on both the sides of the border with impunity, without any problems. Right? That's what it is.
So that's being true economic ambassadors of India. Yes. So coming to Anirudh, you heard our two speakers. They pointed at two different aspects. Then there is emerging tech, there is deep tech. There's a lot of jargon which floats around, a lot of things said about, but nothing put in practice as of now. How do you see, as a lawyer, the policies and the regulations to some of these deep tech projects and technologies coming up?
Good afternoon. Hope you can hear me well. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to actually deviate a little bit from what the panelists before me have been speaking about. So I was asked to speak about the ethical considerations of artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, etc. And I'll be honest, I was a little nervous when I walked in here, seeing that, to what extent will this room find that discussion relevant. But I was pleased to see that, since morning, pretty much every panel has spoken about, the advent of AI, autonomous systems, etc. And I think while a lot of my policy advisory experience and legal experience comes from the private non-defense side of autonomous systems used, and I'll bring in a lot of those examples here to the table. But I think that discussion might be relevant also for this room. I think, and one of the reasons for that is that I've seen like a lot of policy discussions around ethical considerations sometimes, especially when it comes to AI, are happening more on the non-defense side of things, not so much, when it comes to defense policy making, national security often trumps a lot of other considerations. Everything, you have to take a balanced perspective, but national security, of course, trumps a lot of considerations. On the non-defense side of things, of course, we are struggling with a lot of that kind of policy framework, balancing a lot of conflicting interests. So I want to bring some of that policy learning to this room. So, two considerations in particular. One is bias in systems, and the second is hallucinations. And of course, we've been speaking a lot about both of these. When it comes to bias, I'll maybe take some of these, some examples which a lot of you might have read about also. Very interesting example from the US, where there was a program being run where judges were using AI tools to identify if certain convicts can be given their sentencing can be reduced after say 5 years or 6 years prescribed time frame. And it was found over the years that the tools were more likely to reduce the sentencing for white males as opposed to people of color, right? That's example number one. Example number two was Microsoft, of course, which is at the forefront today in a lot of AI tools that we see. Had introduced a tool 3.5 years back or so, which was immediately, pretty much on the same day, pulled out. Because what happened in a couple of hours of launch was that interacting with certain users who might have just decided to play with the system, started using anti-Semitic kind of verbiage, and the tool picked up and started greeting people with "Hail Hitler," right? It thought that maybe that's how you essentially you greet welcome people, and the tool was pulled down the same day. Now, what I'm trying to get to is that bias is a very real concern, right? And the primary reason for that is when you train a tool on data sets which are not diverse enough, ultimately your training data is also a reflection of the world that you live in, right? And that very much then you see through in the output or generated by the AI. Now, what we are trying to solve for in policy discussions is a policy level response to this and an engineering level response to this, right? Engineering is, and before that, I would like to say something that, well, bias is ultimately very inherently human. So if we are going to design systems, that bias does creep in. But I would like to argue, and sometimes a controversial statement, that it is possibly far easier to address bias in a machine than to address bias in a human being. I can diversify the training data for a machine through policy input. For a human being to ask them to read more, change the way they think about the world becomes difficult. So that, I mean, that's the larger kind of, philosophical point which I make. But coming back to, the policy level response, a lot of discussion around audits of systems, of explainability of systems. So can you have an engineering solution that where you can ask a machine to explain how it arrived at a certain decision? Right? It's a very complex engineering challenge. A lot of work's being going on, and honestly, explainability is still very, very nascent. But that's one response. The other is diversifying not just the training data, but diversifying the teams that develop, that curate training data or that develop these tools. Now, taking certain examples, coming from the non-defense side of things, maybe I was, let's look at some defense-related, where bias can say have some kind of interplay with defense also. And by the way, I'll be honest, this morning I actually asked this question to one of the AI tools that I use. So the answers that I'm going to give you now, the example, are all coming from an AI tool. But basically, they spoke about the tool gave me ideas about how in component design, you can have, if your component design tool is not trained on very diverse data, then one example being it can over-represent certain materials which have historically been used because of access to those materials, say in a particular country, and might disregard the availability of materials that are futuristic, right? Or depending on what questions you ask the machine, you could have short-term, you could take into consideration short-term objectives and prioritize them over long-term objectives. The third example it gave me was when you're designing, say, a cockpit, and you design it to the average male body, not taking into account a female pilot, for example. So these are some interesting examples that kind of the tool threw up at me, right? So this is bias. Hallucination, just a quick explainer, is when the machine hallucinates. It imagines an output. A great example from my field of work is a true example in the US, where a lawyer was pulled up in the court because they cited case law in the petition which did not exist. This was basically because they relied on the machine, which imagined a certain case law, gave you facts and everything, and the judge's opinion on it. Now, the answer to that is again policy level and engineering. As the world is kind of becoming more cognizant of these challenges, we are having hallucinations being expressed. And I'll urge you to actually. I mean, I see in the last 3 or 4 months how much ChatGPT and Claude and other tools have already progressed in how hallucination, etc., is becoming slightly less rampant. But the other thing that we're seeing is fine-tuned models, right? So yes, when you have a general purpose language model, which is meant to address all kinds of questions, it is not really trained in your specific field of study, and so it is more likely to hallucinate. But when, for example, we pilot legal tools specifically trained on legal data with guardrails to work on legal projects, they're so much better in understanding, what is hallucination, what can I do and what can I not suggest, etc., etc. So fine-tuned models are one response to hallucinations. Yes, I mean, these are some I just wanted to quickly kind of bring to your attention some of these considerations, ethical, etc., and how there are engineering and policy level responses that are being drawn out to these.
Thank you, Anirudh. Do we have Kshitij online? Yeah. Okay. Kshitij, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. We are just waiting for you to appear on the screen, on the big screen. Just hold on. Yeah. You're right there. Yeah. Maybe his volume.
There might be a
Yeah. We can hear you, Kshitij. We can hear you and we can see the planet behind you.
okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just joined the chat and I was listening to one of the panelists. Great conversation there. And I would agree to what they were saying. It is, I think they were also referring to the models are as good as the data that we provide. And that's why a lot of the things that we use these days, they use a lot of the data from US-based systems. And I don't know like how much in India we have generated our own data. So it's very important as a nation for us to rely on our data as well, because our data it has been built up. So if it's made in the West, for example, so a lot of data comes from those critics, then that has a certain kind of bias, and of course that might not work for the kind of population or the kind of companies or kind of things that we are doing. So ultimately we have to use those carefully. And I had the fortune to work on one of the DAPA projects when I joined Purdue University here as a full-time worker. So in that
Thank you very much, Kshitij. We'll come back to you with your final remarks before we close the session. Now, this morning, sir, we spoke about Artemis Accords. We signed that last year just before the G20 meeting. Immediately after the G20 meeting, when the Prime Minister, no, immediately after the Chandrayaan success, which we are sort of not discussing in detail today for some reason, we should have been discussing it. But after the Chandrayaan success, when Prime Minister went to South Africa for the BRICS summit, he made one big proposition to the BRICS multilateral that should we have a BRICS planetary exploration consortium where we'll pool in the resources the same way we are pulling in for the Artemis Accords. So that means in the context of AI, the biases, the technology, segregation that we are talking about, there will be two set of standards that will emerge eventually. One set of standards will be more Russia, China oriented in the BRICS community, with we trying to intervene and sort of enter ourselves into it. And then there will be Artemis-led architecture, Artemis-led standards. For us, what kind of orientation we would have? What kind of orientation our ecosystem would have? Would our ecosystem want to be part of Artemis? Would they want to be part of the BRICS consortium? And when I'm talking about ecosystem, I'm talking about companies that are located in the same city. Perhaps there might be a Pune company working in Artemis, a Pune company working in BRICS consortium. You never know. How do we sort of place ourselves? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to global technopolitics, it will all come in under the purview of denial, segregation, isolation, disruption, and all that. So maybe your takes on that?
Not to the precise, or I believe in multilateralism. On one aspect, I might be having difference of opinion, cutthroat fight on something with Chaitanya. But on other aspect, we might be jailed so well that we will take that ahead. So this is multilateralism actually in the larger interest, of course, of the larger good of the society. And that is where I actually agree with him, the planetary defense. I mean, this is something, again, disaster comes into picture. We talk, entire Sendai framework talks about disasters originated on the earth. They have missed talking. This was the third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in Sendai, which came with Sendai framework, have completely missed the disasters oriented from space, which is near Earth object threats. It is completely missed. We are promoting that one. And if you, I'm coming to that point, but just wanted to tell you, when Skylab was following along, I was in school and I was in a very small village. Lots of my village people sold their, take out their, sold their gold, took out the savings and enjoyed life because they thought Skylab is something enormous and, explosive. Whereas it was a small thing, it will fall somewhere. So, so I was in Sangli district, Tahsil Atpadi, and the village is Diganchi, my small village where I was, and I saw that. I never thought I would sometimes tell this example of my village at Washington DC in the Planetary Defense Conference. I told this, and I said, you all are now naming each of the threat from the space. Each of the asteroid is now named after someone being tracked 10 years before it can hit the Earth. We can basically find the trajectory. It is called International Asteroid Warning Network. But no disaster manager was on the board. No Indian was representing into Planetary Defense Conference in many conferences. I voiced it there. Now I'm happy that India has become part of those kind of things and we're contributing. But disaster manager not on board. So finally we got in 2018 Planet Defense, we got the disaster managers from the worldwide. We did a simulation with NASA, 4 days continuous simulation of asteroids coming, which areas are threatened, then how to narrow down next 4 days, 4 days simulation, and finally how messages should be given so that people don't become panic. And for cyclone we know where we can get the information, for drought we know, floods we know, but for such kind of interplanetary disasters, where is the source and how not to panic? And those kind of things have been devised and published. So what I wanted to say that Artemis Accord or this planetary defense or this thing or being part of the solar weather initiative by having Aditya L1, I think India has become probably the one of the global player. 5 years back, it was very much ignored in these areas, but now we are something, and I think that multilateralism and keeping even whether it's BRICS or whether we go with Artemis or whether we go into UN initiatives of planetary defense, asteroid warning network or thing, I think having that multilateralism is the only way to probably keep ourselves dominating and impacting our thoughts and our policies and make an impression on the basically world scenario. That's the thing. Yeah.
Amit?
Thanks. So I'm kind of going back to your question with regards to either we should align with Artemis or BRIC, right? I'll break it down into 4 or 5 different discussion points. I think number one is technological advancements. I feel that we should not pick a side based entirely on a geological location or geographical location. I'm a big fan of Dr. Jaishankar, and I think in one of his talks, he basically said, "Why can't I have my own side? Right? I'm 1/5 of the world population. I can have my own side, right? So why should we have to pick a side? Why can't we pick up from a technology perspective the best of what the world has to offer and create our own position, right? And also, why can we not build technology that the world wants from us at the same time? Let's not only be the takers, let's also be the givers, right? We have the capability to be the givers, so let's create and let's give and let's offer to the rest of the world. I think the second thing is that global competition, okay? There is a tremendous amount of global competition that will start off. This is almost like, a Cold War in a way, where, the space war is going to leapfrog the countries in terms of technology over each other. And as we have seen, space tech always leads to better civilian tech, right? So why not leverage this opportunity where the countries are motivated, the governments are motivated to make the investments into deep tech, into new tech, and use that and find repurpose those things for civilian advancements, right? I think there is economic impacts that create out of it as well, right? So with countries and governments who are motivated to make those investments, this trickle down economics that happens, right? So herein there is a consideration that I feel we as entrepreneurs have to make, wherein we have to decide to buy local as much as possible. Buy best, but buy local. If there is a local alternative, buy local, right? I feel that we deviate more towards low cost than right location, or the right tech. And so all things being equal, and I say this openly and I say this, in large groups as well, that all things being equal, I will always prefer to buy from India than from anywhere else in the world. Okay? So there is आपल्याला मराठीत बोलतो, आपल्याला जर हवं असेल तर आपण घरीच पहिल्यांदा पैसे आणले पाहिजेत, बाहेरच्या माणसाला कशाला द्यायचे, राईट? सो गिव्ह टू अवर्स फर्स्ट बिफोर वी गिव्ह टू अदर्स, राईट? अँड आय थिंक द लास्ट बिट इज द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टंट बिट. वी नीड टू हॅव इंटरनॅशनल कोऑपरेशन. Okay, if you want to go quick, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together, right? So in that case, we need to build the relationships which are a give and take based relationship, where we are also giving while we are taking, and build a respectful relationship with the rest of the world where we can go far together, because no one person is going to go and colonize Mars or going to go and mine moon for all the goodies that we can find over there. It's not going to happen. And you, sir, are a prime example. I mean, United Nations, you're part of the entire ecosystem where countries are coming together and countries are willing to help, right? And I think if we give, we will always get. So I think it has to start with that, right? So I think that's what I will have. I think I'll leave the legal minds to talk about the legal angle.
No, actually, I'll just add to your last point, which I love, which is about international cooperation. I think there's a lot to be gained out of one, alignment of national policies with international global treaties. Space by itself is a global offering. A lot of products, especially SATCOM, remote sensing, are global by nature, right? And we are really limiting industry potential if global products were to actually be regulated in silos across different jurisdictions. So alignment of national policies with global treaties, I think, will be a big win for the global industry. Also, we've seen, I think, over decades, there's been a marked shift in the space race, from the space race to cooperation in space, right? The International Space Station, for example, is a prime example. So the world is changing in that sense as well. And there are a lot of issues today that require that kind of global consensus, whether it is debris management, there is militarization of space, you have sharing of space derived resources, etc. So I think there is definitely a lot of merit in that synchronicity.
Kshitij, over to you. Last words.
Yes. Um, uh, yeah, I heard all the panelists and they gave extremely important as well as great points. So I concur with most of the panelists, and one thing is like we need to be leaders than chasers, which is what I feel. Especially if we eye to be a Vishnu Guru, I feel instead of being a Vishnu Guru, we could be a great friend of everyone at the end of the day. But unfortunately, like not everyone thinks in our way, and some don't even look at us as friends. So we cannot we can do what is in our control. So that's what we need to do. And we need not to pick sides, which is one of the panelists I think very well mentioned. Instead, we should make ourselves so strong that people should pick us. Everyone should want us than we wanting the sides. So that is very important. And for that to happen, we have to become Atmanirbhar at one point or the other. And when I see my own, like my wife's home in Japan, almost 98 to 99% of the products they use, everything is made in Japan, be it from a needle to a bicycle, to a watch, to a camera, or whatever. It's made in Japan very proudly. And they proudly represent also that this is my country's thing. So the time when we Indians will start doing the same thing and we take pride in our own things, what we build in India, be it from any part of India, be it Maharashtra, UP or Gujarat, we need to back our own people, and I think we are doing a great job right now, and things are moving in that direction. So that's there. And again, somebody very well mentioned about the international cooperation part of it. Is I have heard here, I have been learning at World US, that ideas compete, but people collaborate. So at the end of the day, one nation might have some core competency without which we cannot make our mission possible, as well as international cooperation is needed because the risk and the cost to do a mission gets distributed. So it's not like one nation which takes all the brunt of any mission. Say for example, sending humans to Mars, which I can easily say is a very complicated mission. So that way, I think all the panelists, I think, our regulation on a lot of these things is where I think India should be headed towards.
Okay, so we have somebody with the last word for the session, General Khandare.
See, I agree with all the panelists, whatever you've said, but a few points which I want to make. When you talk of collaboration or cooperation, that should also be from a position of strength. If you are going to call yourself cooperating or collaborating and actually it is dependence, then you are a poor partner. Actually speaking, that is the reality of the world. The second part is, after a seminar, we definitely need some report which obviously MCCI would compile. And Anirudh, I had one point here. You know, when we talk of global commons and we talk of internet being for everyone, sky being for everyone, space being from everyone, actually it is not true. So whoever is in position is actually dominating, and that is why this very interesting question which Chaitanya spoke about, whether Artemis or whether BRICS model. And Amit, I agree with you. We should actually have our own stance as well as being in both. Unless you balance it out, you are then pulled by your nose to whichever direction the other person wants you to be. And to that extent, I think strategically all of us must understand this. And Anirudh, my only request to you is, maybe Ikigai, you could suggest some ways to get out of certain traps Like one of the thing is that L1 trap. We have to get out of it. The other one is what is global commons. You know, if we say internet is for everyone, but internet is not of everyone. You're dependent on internet and you could be thrown out the moment. Similarly, if you talk of the GPS, it is not of everyone. You may be using it. Tomorrow, your own missiles and subsystems could well be redirected to get back at you. So, what is when you talk of AI ethics, what about these global common ethics? You know, even that needs to be, so in your policy advocacy, I think that is one of the things, and I think when I spoke to Rutuja the other day, that was one of the issue that I thought, young people like you have a future ahead of you. Would you rather be led by your nose, or you say no? Global commons has to be really global. It cannot be dictated by anybody.
A direct answer to Artemis or something that the BRICS would offer. Artemis, really speaking, India was the 27th signatory to the total of 43. So it means it was not the foremost to jump into it. I think a lot of deliberation went into it. Second thing is that our Chandrayaan 3 landed on the southern side of the moon. The Artemis, the first landing is also going to be on the southern side of the moon. So there's a collaboration that what the data that Chandrayaan 3 initially collected is also being used by the Artemis. So it shouldn't happen that we are only giving data and then somebody jumps over this and uses the entire data and then carries on and using it. Third thing is that the entire system, if in the International Space Station, Russia and America can collaborate, who've been in Cold War, they've been enemies and for the last 25 years they've been working together. Why should India be on by itself try to get into a block? Moon is not of East Bloc or West Bloc. Moon is larger than even global common. It is beyond globe. So as a result, when the entire system is the SLS, it is going to be a moon station, then it goes into the human landing system. So the entire system is very different, but the Russians and the Chinese have opted out of it because Chinese built their own space station. If the Chinese have built their own space station because they were not used in the International Space Station, it is just that today the geopolitics is keeping Russia and China on one side, but I think India still has a free play. The system, the technology that the Russians and the Chinese are likely to use for moon and beyond to Mars may be very different. Then why should we deprive ourselves of that kind of a knowledge? Because after all, we initiated our space system through the Soviet baseline of technology. So I think we have to be very clear. I think all this is being said is in the same direction, that let's not choose sides, because we, from one side to the other, we will lose something. So let's gain more.
Thank you. Really great insights and perspectives on deep tech and space tech development. Thank you once again. I request General Khandare to please. Yes. Mr. Anirudh Rastogi. Mr. Amit Mahajan. Dr. Shirish Rawan. Dr. Kshitij, we will be missing doing this with you in person. However, do visit us once you are in Pune. And Dr. Chaitanya Giri, would you like another memento? No. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the panelists.
Can I say one last thing? I think, look, we have General Khandare here, who has been the guiding light for a lot of us youngsters as we started building this thing. And sir, I'm really grateful for your guidance. We look forward to having more of it in the future. Thank you very much.
A group picture, please. Thank you. With this, we move on to the next session. The speaker, Mr. Anil Prakash, DG Satcom Industry Association, India, and Mr. Vivek Mokashi, Senior Deputy GM, Larsen and Toubro. The topic is Industry Outlook on Development of Defense Space Technologies, with the moderator, Mr. Harsh Kune, Member, Core Group, MCCI Defense Committee. Is he here?
Good afternoon once again. I know it's very difficult to continue in the post-lunch session. So, since it is industry perspective, we would like to keep it very, very informal and very, very interactive. Would not prefer a monologue because industry comes with issues which also relate to the industries here, startups here. So I'm sure the panelists wouldn't mind interactive session and a lot of question and answers rather than being a monologue. So from the industry perspective, what we really need to understand is strategic initiatives of the organization. What do you see space, new opportunities, required skill sets and possible initiatives, opportunities, technology trends and challenges. So I leave the forum open for both of you to share your views informally and the way you feel comfortable. But most importantly, we'll have interactive sessions. So all up to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really my privilege to have here invited to speak. We are also a strategic partner for this event. And first of all, I wanted to congratulate each one of you sitting in the room, a celebration of Indian Space Day. So this is you can say the history has written in one sense. It is divided the world have and have not. It has changed India's position dramatically, and it's lead to, although a geopolitical position is already drifted towards in favor of India, but Chandrayaan was a landmark, or you can say summit, which divided the world. The world which is have, which we call developed world, and the world which have not, which is the developing world. Our India is standing tall among the 4 nations which has the deep space exploration capabilities. India stands tall in the number of 7 nations, League of 7 Nations, which has space launch capabilities. It means the rest of the world is not having exactly which India has. India has got complete 360-degree capabilities. We are proud that we are 500 base industry we have, which is largely led by the space startups companies. We have close to 200 space startups. We have close to about 300 MSME and close to about 50 odd large industry. So what does this mean to us? And as a moderator of this session, I said we have to talk about the capabilities. It means India has got 360-degree capabilities in the space sector. It means we have a lot more to give to the world. When I say it is summit, it's divides into or brought India into center stage because of our space capabilities. After Chandrayaan mission, those who are looking us as a giver or a provider of their space assets or services in terms of dependency, they are looking forward to India as a partner or as a co-developer because of our strength. The world which is not having a space capability, they are looking forward to India to build up their capabilities. I myself have met close to about 60 head of nations, their ministers, their ambassadors, their defense attaches, and the the session which we have, India Space Congress, we have concluded in last June. It was attended by 850 delegates from 36 nationalities. And there are 6 space agency people were there. There are 2 heads of space agency were there. There are 5 country delegation was participated. All who's who were present there. So that shows that India is definitely going forward in the space direction. What exactly, I've just touched upon 3 basic fundamental things in my talk, which basically we have to build upon, we have to live on. Number 1, as I said, we have the largest pool of startup, space startup in the Asia Pacific region. What exactly it means to us? It means we are building a great asset in form of the innovation. The only thing which lacks, that we have to correlate to them, not alone, just not leave them alone. We need to handhold by the MSME, we need to handhold by large industry. So at least they will quickly go in the evaluate chains from T1 to TRL9 quickly. Because otherwise, if you leave them alone to survive, I think very few will see the light of the day. So I think each one which innovation, I give a full credit to them because they have come out some out of box thinking, they have something brought, something which we have to look at it without giving them full length capability or opportunities. I think it is injustice to startups if we turn them down, just want of some, they are not getting enough investment, they are not getting enough opportunity to put their space worthy equipment or service. Everything goes into space, it has to be 100% proof. So we can't go 999.99. It has to be 100%. So it is required that our space worthiness is very important if you wanted to put the thing. So how they will get into the space worthy situation, that's the industry handholder. Government is definitely doing a remarkable good job. InSpace is doing a very credible job lifting the morale or also hand-holding the space startups. Second thing which moderator touched upon, to talk about the capabilities metrics. Basically, we lack knowledge information about what exactly in this room, what these people are doing. Until you meet them, exchange your cards or talk to them, nobody knows who this person is sitting and what is talking. So how they will come, how do we correct them? So it is we have to correct, we have to build a database. We have to build a database of each one of you to bring them searchable data. So at least anyone is looking for certain particular product or service, whether it is or investors or the technology providers or the giver or the people who are looking for collaboration. So it is a one-stop shop for that. So we are already taking, as a industry association, we are taking this plan and we are already creating a database. We have mapped around 500 industries in the space sector, and we have come out with a survey form. If you have not reached out to you, please reach to our website and fill up those survey forms. At least your company, yourself will be listed into that. This will be made available next 2 months. We are going to launch it. And then we will put up whatever the survey, full survey is available, whatever there is available to us, because we are getting a requirement from Ministry of Defense, we are getting requirement from DRDO or ISRO or investors or the collaborators. We are handling 2 delegations in next 2 months. One is the Australian delegation, which is coming to participate in Bangalore Space Expo from 18 to 20th. We are taking them in study tour. Some of them to Hyderabad and Bangalore to the company site visits. So we have listed some companies which they have shown interest. We are also bringing collaboration with them. Then we are also coming out another delegation which is coming in October. That is French delegation, which is about 62 companies are coming. So they also coming to Delhi, Bangalore and Hyderabad. So we are also hand holding them to take it to the study tour to those companies. Pune, we also offer them a side trip because majority of them are available. So we have to convince them. You have to give a lot more things that Pune has got this many companies which you should make it. We already had, like Australia also we are offering them. is side trip to Chennai and Pune, Bombay. So we always offer them. In fact, we offered them in last year also. The French delegation, some of them we brought to Chennai, and one or two also gone to Pune. So definitely it is very much on our mark. That definitely we one should know, but because of time limitation, because of the things, that's things not working. But independent companies, so we will give them opportunity for you to also directly interact with them. So at least you lure them. Hey guys, why are you not visiting me? I'm just 2 hours away from that place. So I think we will leave this thing to we will this list is made available to you. You can directly contact with the delegation which is coming for. So you can talk to the guy, and then we will provide the platform for your interaction. The third thing which I wanted to bring to the table, which our association thought it is a challenging, that the procurement process, because the user one side is frustrated. I'm talking about specifically when this is the defense forum, so I'm talking about user as a defense. The user is frustrated. They want a solution yesterday, and they are struggling to get tomorrow. So yesterday solution they are not getting tomorrow, and tomorrow is not just tomorrow. Tomorrow is it's getting into years. So by the time the solution comes to me, the technology is already obsoleted. So the procurement process is lengthy, and it is sometimes it is one company which I know from Bangalore. They're so frustrated. They said after spending 4 years with the defense, and they have not even reached to any conclusion, they stopped worrying about defense versus they're deploying their service somewhere else. So that kind of frustration which industry is developing. So we're trying to bring both pieces together. We have also have a defense set, which is defense space event, which just concluded in February. We are having industrial war game exercises led by General Kandare and General Pannu. It is getting momentum. So one side of the procurement process are sitting, one side the user is sitting, and one side is the industry is sitting. So they discuss about their problem and how industry can meet the problem and the process involved into getting this problem solved. So we're trying to bring the solution on the table, and we come out with a report, recommendation, what should be done. So we are working in that direction. Third thing which we are, not fourth thing which we are doing, that is there is a lot more defense offset obligations is pending at large. There is $7 billion is pending at large out of $12 billion. So what we are doing, we came out with a white paper on positioning that defense space is ready. If you should include into the offset obligation. So whatever that will build up our capabilities, number one. And other side, those who want to do offset obligation, they have no problem. They said we were ready to work with the space company because they're already working. The Salt is working with some company, Thales is working, Airbus is working, so are a number of other companies. So we're trying to bring that piece also to the table. So what I'm trying to say, of course there are challenges are there, but there is a way also to deal with them. Of course, time is the essence, and we have to meet these things on a time-bound manner. Otherwise, we are going to miss the bus. As far as the collaboration is concerned, collaboration is key to success for the space sector because we have a lot more to be learned from the other countries. And as we become partner and we become partner, in fact, we are bringing something more on the table which they don't have. I think that is the value proposition for them, and we are building that block together. And purpose of my meeting with more than 60 countries are basically on that each country requires some kind of handholding from India. So those collaboration we can bring on table. That's all from my side. Thank you very much, and I will happy to answer question later on. Thank you.
Any questions? Please feel free to ask questions. As I mentioned, we would like to have it very interactive. Amit, any questions?
Yes. So, sir, one question I have with regards to offsets. Typically, what I have seen is the foreign OEMs, they will buy trivial products from the Indian companies, which will not be very high-end electronics or software or algorithms or whatever it is. It will be, not very sensitive type of areas. They'll try to keep us into the fringes. We'll always be doing metallurgy work or, metal crafting and things like that. How can we push them towards procuring some of the more interesting and more higher order type of work in terms of the offset? Is there some provision we can do for that?
No, first of all, let me give a clarity from the companies which are they're supposed to offset. Because they want to partner with the Indian companies on a high end. Because they are already partnered with them in other sector. So only thing is they don't want to go on the travel participation because they don't want to waste their money on content. So technology, either they have to do technology transfer or you have to do some, development, or you procure something which is in the white list. So unfortunately, space sector was not there. Even aerospace was also taken out from the white list in the last offset. So the problem which we are facing in the offset obligation is at this moment, which is offset is no more. New contracts are not on offset, is 100% BGDS. So the offset is the previous procurement which has done. So they said we cannot go retrospectively, but this government can do anything. This government is totally a out of box thinking government. If there's something good for the industry, they will definitely. So our position paper, which is available in our website, you just go and have a look at. It is creating buzz right now in that thing. Even we had lot of meetings with the policy maker, whether it is PSA, whether it's PMO or military advisor, General Khandare himself is pushing it. So it is creating some vibes in the thing. So probably we'll have some kind of reply on that. Of course, it depends on the companies what exactly they want to do. So you have to interact with the majors, which they have large portion for offset. So it is very much on their card. They don't want to go on to lose with.
I will just add to this. We worked on offset right from 2009. Though we are being a big company, still we were working on offset. One just observation you mentioned rightly. Normally these foreign OEMs, they don't involve Indian companies in a critical and niche area. You are absolutely right. However, there is a way. By working with them, maybe for 3 years, 2 years, whatever time period you can work with them, you basically develop that culture within your organization, that how to work globally. You will have that exposure of international quality culture. That's first thing. Second, you can work with them on a build to spec kind of systems which are not niche for them or which are not critical for them. So by doing both of these things, you will become some part of their supply chain globally. Okay. And definitely you will get multiple other kind of opportunities once you are there in their supply chain. Not only from the same OEM, because internationally all OEMs are interconnected, whether you take Europeans, whether you take Americans. So they have their common supply chain base, and from there you will get definitely multiple kind of new opportunities which we got in past.
Any other question? Sir, I am from technical background. Maybe if any student or anybody want to do something in this sector, although other communities are also interconnected, but in particular defense or space sector, if anybody any new anybody who want to try something or do something, so how would be your advice for them?
Actually, question is not very clear.
Someone who is new to the space, new to this space, and want to do something. So how can we contribute? How can these discussions go forward? How to
Somebody who's new to the field. Doesn't know anything.
No, for that, you might have heard the IDEX challenges, space challenges by the Ministry of Defense. So IDEX challenges is a scheme of such. They keep coming on different challenges. So they list out various challenges. I think the group captain has gone. They list it out, and it is publicly made available document. If you have that kind of a solution available to you, which or it will guide you. Two things will happen. One, you are already working on that field, which is now the problem statement is given by the IDEX challenges. So you can bid for that, or you are thinking, or you might say, oh yes, I can do that. I can work on this area. So this will also give you the idea for the. So ideation can be done from that thing. So now we are also like IDEX challenges. We are also talking to number of ministries. Like we talked about the good governance, disaster things and all. The number of ministries, we are talking to them and we tell them IDEX challenge. You can also throw some challenges from your side, and we are giving them some sample challenges. We have come out close to about 200 such challenges from various ministries, Ministry of Port, Ministry of Fishing, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Urban Development. So like that, we are throwing some possible problem statement for them, which they can add or subtract. So they may be coming that sound. So it means the avenues will be much larger. So each ministry will be coming out.
We are there from the space side.
They are all space. I'm talking about space. Only space. Our job is eat, drink, sleep.
10, 20 challenges on
Every
net.
10 to 15 challenges from each ministry. So we are giving them some kind of a guideline. Look at this is the possible challenges you might be having for governance. Look at it and also examine it. Maybe you may come out more on it. So we are doing, in fact, we are doing some series of workshop, or our conference will have a state things where we invite governors, we invite ministers to listen to that, and they come out with those ideas. So we are agitating this idea mind of the policymaker.
I'll just add to it. His question was very specific. If you want to work on some of the problem areas which are identified by either defense forces or space, maybe industries or big kind of integrator. Under Make in India, there is a Defense Make in India site. On that you can go, and there are multiple IDEX challenges, problem statements which are mentioned. If you have a solution, you can approach. There are multiple schemes under DRDO through TDFS. There also you can apply. It is for startups, MSMEs. You can basically give your solution if it is already developed or is under development. DRDO as well as ISRO, they also have their similar kind of AOP scheme. You can approach them, they will handle you, they will take you through the process, and multiple times once product is at the TRL 8, TRL 9, so you may be getting maybe production orders also if that particular system is required in immediate future.
Now I would like to request Mr. Mokashi to share his views on the topics we just dwell upon.
Good evening all. I am Vivek Mukashi. I am representing Larsen and Toubro. I will try to stick to the topics given by moderator. I am really feeling privileged to represent my company here. Also feeling proud to be a integral part of Chandrayaan 1, 2 and 3 missions. Yes, there were learnings of each Chandrayaan missions. We could rectify ourselves as a country, and finally we could get the huge success which entire world is still celebrating and want us to collaborate with us. Larsen and Toubro were an Indian multinational particularly for strategic sector, we are working since more than 5 decades, particularly in space. We traveled with ISRO right from start of the incubation of ISRO till ISRO proven India as a space-faring nation. So we traveled that journey along with ISRO. Yes, multiple challenges we faced. We have taken multiple initiatives. We established the required facilities, culture. Space culture is a little bit different. Multiple startups are here, they will agree. And developing that culture, retaining that culture as well as sustaining is one of the very good initiatives everybody has to initiate. In addition, one of the initiatives which we have already taken, we don't have any kind of affinity to work with any startup which normally big companies have. Rather, we are the only company who is vendor to 2 to 3 startups I don't want to name. We are vendor to startups also because we work in a collaborative way. We want them to develop. We all agree that space will be the next frontier. We know all data. We are going to be a 1.8 trillion economy, that is space economy by 2035, 1 trillion by 2030. From 2% of our present part or present pie which India has, we want to go to 9%, 12%. Yeah, we have that dreams. And we are going towards that. Government has already opened the sector. Multiple things, policies are in place. Yes, there are challenges. Together in a collaborative way, we have to overcome these challenges. And I know we'll do that. Another thing that requires skill sets. Very important, you can say, a dimension to be there in space. Your resources you cannot generate particularly manpower in a day. So, yeah, there are multiple things we need to do, maybe through chambers and other things. Academia can have multiple courses. I think till date, no university or no big institution have undergrad course for space. Just Indore recently started. I think they are in 3rd year or final year. IIST, which is a space DOS sponsored organization, yes, they have undergrad. But still, space undergrad programs we need to have. In addition, right from school level, maybe 7th onwards, we should have specific space-oriented chapters in a syllabus or maybe courses so that we can get the huge manpower which will be required if we want to achieve the target which we have set for us, 9%, 10%. Because with existing inflow of a space qualified or space knowing skill set, we are not going to achieve that. Lastly, particular opportunities. There are ample opportunities which are available. We can become a global manufacturing hub for certain payloads. We can be a satellite integrator. We can be a launch for the globe. And we are marching towards that. All these things ISRO has developed, and we should be proud of that organization who has taken us as a country to the spacefaring nations. So we have technology, we have know-how. Now as an industry, as a startup, we have to rather whatever new technologies are there with existing technology, we have to merge with them, and we have to find out a new avenue so that we can serve the globe. Yes, collaboration is one of the key things which we need to be inculcate in every organization, whether it is small or big. One initiative we have taken some few years back, though we were there in space right from more than 5 or 6 decades, we are very clear what our strengths are. So for PSLV industrialization, we tied up with company like HAL. So it is again another collaboration. I have given one example of collaborating with startups. So collaboration is the key. There are multiple stakeholders which have to collaborate to make this particular space sector successful in coming future. GOI, that is Government of India, we already are aware what kind of stakes they have taken. ISRO, which will be definitely in a front row or front seat, who has to take all us along with them. In space, another stakeholder, industry, big industries, small industries, startups, academia, and not the least or not the last, that is MSME, SMEs. Because without this particular sector or segment, no sector, no industry can perform. With the kind of agility, kind of fast learning which is required, only MSME can have. So collaboration we have to have success. Last point which moderator have given, that is basically what are the space technology trends. Yes, there are multiple trends which will be coming up globally, and yes, we will aspire to serve that. However, we have to first identify the need of our country, how we will become Atmanirbhar. As General Pannu was mentioning PME, when we go for mass production, we face issue of material. As a infrastructure, we are there in 3D printing, we are there in composites, multiple companies are there, but we don't have material still. We still depend on Europeans, Americans, even Russians for material. So there are certain kind of things, or that is basic needs are there which we have to start today if we want to be globally successful and really Atmanirbhar in the sense. Lastly, what are the challenges from industry perspective? Space being a very capital incentive or intensive kind of segment, the certain kind of help will be required from government, which government is trying to do. There are certain challenges we'll overcome. In addition, there is high gestation period. Just now Anil sir was mentioning, after 4 years, some startup has given up. Now, how to survive in that gestation period? So maybe industry forums, even larger industry like us, we have to sit together, think how to make this particular gestation period less, or how to survive in this gestation period. In addition, there should be a kind of proper system integration knowledge, which we still lag as a country. When we talk about big kind of technology like space, even defense certain particular weapon systems. So we have to develop that. We do have that, no doubt in that. Yes, our brain is coming back. People are saying like this. Whatever people are settled in outside India, they are now coming back. So that system engineering knowledge we have to have. Another issue is talent retention. When you go into production, mass production, or when you become little bit bigger, so this is one of the challenges which industry face. Funding and insurance. There are other issues one has to tackle, and chambers definitely are working on that. Global competition. This is also one of the challenge. Like, if I am going to develop certain things, certain systems, subsystems, till the time it is not space qualified, you will not be considered at all. Okay. So the kind of testing infrastructure, testing timeline, money for testing which is required to certify your systems, that help is required. That is also another challenge. Another thing is awareness and education. I am not talking about awareness and education in school, college. I am talking about awareness and education in the financial institution for funding to the space startups or space industry. The way in earlier panel discussion, people were mentioning that people are not aware about the kind of benefits of space. Similar way, certain financial institutions are not aware of the kind of business one can generate from this particular space tech. So that awareness is also required. That is also one of the challenge. Lastly, the assets which will be there by our maybe Indian companies, startups, even some of the established company in future, safety and security of that particular assets. We have to think on these parameters so that we can have a sustained growth in the space or space economy. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for L&T. I think, like we mentioned in the inaugural, L&T has been a torch bearer of what private industries can do for this country, and in fact, it is very critical that the private industry has a proven track record of giving a very sustainable and predictable supply chain. In fact, L&T supports something like more than 4,000 MSMEs. More than 4,000 MSMEs. So, any questions before we dwell upon some topics to debate?
10 years before, I think, after the cryogenic thing, where India developed its own cryogenic technology to actually to send thing in the space. Because after that, then there was a talk about having all these launch vehicles, GSLV, PSLV, and all that. Pune was also a city where they said that we should have a launch vehicle, at least GSLV or a PSLV, but nothing came up. It was just talk in the newspapers. It all went into the south, where basically ISRO is actually launching its satellites from its launch vehicles. So that time, what happened to Pune?
Sir, I think this is more related to location, because the board is closer to equator. It is launch is much better. So that's why all countries, there is a particular sites are specifically meant for the launch. So that could be the one of the reason why it is launch is not. Of course, small launches can take from any place, but the GSLV, PSLV, which require high thrust, and it's a large rocket, large payloads. So that's required, because if it is more closer to equator, that most of the launch sites are like that. So that's why they have chosen it.
B.H. Shrikant, I would like to highlight upon this question. If I am right or right, if I am not right, if I am not right, please correct it. It is a nice that the nice strategy of Government of India and the Modi government, that whatever the space program is there of India, that has been converted into business campaign. All other countries' satellites we are launching from Thumba in Trivandrum and Sriharikota from Andhra. Okay, already other country satellites we are launching through PSLV, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Okay, or 2 stations already are enough for us. So there is no other PSLV to be set up in Pune. That was not seriously picked. That is why that idea was set back to set up in Pune.
Up on the equator side. That way Maharashtra is down. This is also a business case.
2 stations were already enough at Thumba and Sriharikota. There was no need to set up a third PSLV at Pune.
That was not miss the bus for the space startup.
And already we are.
L&T is actually mentoring 400 space startups. Bangalore is going very fast, and now some space startups have done so much of innovation that Pentagon and NASA also have started putting their money into it. I was reading Times of India, basically, particularly Thursday or Friday, that
it is nice business strategy.
In Pune.
That we are charging them, other countries, for the satellites to launch through our both stations. We are earning money from our space program.
It is just correct that 400 startups are total startups, not space startups. So yeah, we do have a startup incubation cell in Larsen and Toubro, wherein we normally evaluate startup not only for helping them, sometimes investing also. So yes, 400 such startups in various fields we are working with. Coming coming to sir's this thing question, there are 2 spaceports are already available. So there is little bit technicality concerned to this. Whether our Char, that Andhra Pradesh, whatever launch we do, we still cannot have a basically polar orbit, and for having a polar orbit, we go to that new particular site which is going to be established within Kulashekharapatnam. Having such a large launch pad, other than that kind of area, we don't have that much space available in basically northern side, number one. Number two, more you move towards north side, you will require that much fuel, that much you can say heavy launch vehicle. It's a waste of resources and money. So it is immaterial where launch site is, because across the India you can still have a manufacturing and business and maybe your thing whatever you want to supply for space.
I think, sir, if I may build upon sir's comment, it's more than just a launch site. If we can have smaller launch sites for sounding rockets or some of those type of smaller craft out of Pune area, what it does is that it enables the local businesses to get
Even farming,
started.
even farming.
Yeah.
AI in farming, it actually maps the whole area and puts the stress points in that farm. So basically Pune also needs that.
Sir, what it will do is that it will give a boost to the local teams who don't have to travel that far down into the south to go and access those facilities. So maybe it is a consideration. But coming back to your point with regards to L&T evaluating startups and small and medium businesses, it would be great if one of these days L&T can share something to the MCCI group so that we can then apply or at least present our credentials to L&T with a specifications, and that way, so if you have a needs, then we can also match that as well, right?
Sure, I will definitely provide this to MCCI.
Sir, one thing, sir. We are supplying to defense for last 40 years. We know, if even a pin is to be made, size 10 pin costing 5 rupees, 5,000 rupees has to be sent for testing. So we are aware of all the things, Russian drawings, all things. But now when we come to L&T, that we also want to develop some parts for you. Again, we'll ask all registration, all formality. We have got 44 registrations of defense, 44 years working. But now, if we come to you, then all that process is there. I hope that, whoever are directly supplying to defense, you can give the registration, give that, and start the inquiry. We have developed more than 900 parts for defense. All instruments, optoelectronics, DCF, unexpected Khambariya, but 44 years. But now when we went to your place, then you gave a big list, give all this facility, all this thing. Is that registration and experience not sufficient for taking up at vendor?
I am not aware about the details, so I will not comment on that, but I will just answer to your query. See, we do have our own processes. Definitely we have to follow that, because we manage more than 38,000 different suppliers. Okay. And if we don't have our own system, so we will not have that particular clarity, as well as we have a ranking system of our entire supply chain. We give the rating like Group A, Group B, Group C. Certain times what happens, we get a requirement from our customers. We want system in sometimes 4 months, 5 months, such a short time. So based on rating, so to rate a particular supplier, we want to have a registration, number one. Number two, in a certain very high end kind of systems which we supply, because of the kind of quality or thing which we consistently proven, we are having green channel. Now when we have green channel, so we don't basically get certain kind of quality checks by quality agencies. We are basically waived off because of certain kind of proven track record. So that, to continue that, we require basically a system in place. So that's the reason people must have asked you certain documents to register in our system. So still maybe I will share the details, we can still discuss. I will just find out why actually because if you are supplied, you have 54 more than I think registrations and supplied multiple things. So there should not be issue. Quality wise and capacity wise we don't have any challenge. And we are not doubting, definitely. The process one has to follow, because we don't want to change the kind of process we follow for a green channel.
One elected with one of the officers, he said, we have got our own people, suppliers, why would we want you? So my humble request is that all those experienced in defense, they also should be considered as a special case.
So just couple of thought queries, but would like to know if you can really share, let's say within next 5 to 10 years, what could be the quantum of the space business, and how many MSMEs you feel you can integrate, and what do you feel could be the challenges in terms of the skill set with MSMEs?
So as a space manufacturing industry, presently we are manufacturing, or rather industrialization of PSLV we are doing. Maybe by next year we will be launching first industry PSLV, and after that entire PSLV gradually be transferred to a private industry, our consortium, L&T and HAL, and yes, this will be a very good kind of business for everybody, including the approved supply chain. Yes, we target to have more than 8 PSLV launches per year in coming future. In addition, there are certain kind of RFPs which are already out by ISRO for GSLV and SSLV. We are trying for that, so it is better not to comment on that numbers presently because it is in the tendering process. Particularly for launch vehicles, it is basically designed by ISRO, so there are certain approved supply chain which they have developed. Once it is entirely transferred to company like us, we are definitely going to enhance our supplier base, because the kind of numbers which we are envisaging in coming future, the existing supplier, existing manufacturer will definitely has to be widened. So yes, there would be a good kind of business which will be available in coming future, and whoever is having the capability will definitely come to them, because we also want to grow and we want everybody to grow. This is a launch side. Coming to satellite, yes, we are in discussion with multiple OEMs, foreign OEMs, to integrate their satellites in India. Talks are at very nascent stage. We are hopeful that will be fructify, and we will have a good kind of integration numbers of satellite in next 4 to 5 years. In addition, we are in dialogue with certain OEMs who want to launch their space tourism in a big way. The experience which we carry because of ISRO for GSLV and PSLV launch vehicle manufacturing, so we want to use that particular experience in providing the subsystems from India for global requirement.
What do you mean by industrial satellite? Up till now, all satellites were of communication from satellite to Earth. Okay. What is meant by industrial satellite?
See, why I mean by industry, it is basically a not fully commercial, not fully military. It is a dual use, what this DSP director was mentioning. So that dual use people call industry.
Satellite as well as weather satellite. Why is the private industry not creating an ecosystem where a lot of SMEs can come up and there will be more of launching of satellites so that we can compete with China and US? Very few satellites are coming. I think only ISRO and L&T can't here on the whole situation. Why not open it for the industry?
Our own homegrown space startup, they are coming up. They're going to give a good challenge. See that it's quite a complete ecosystem. The ecosystem supply chain has to grow along with it. So when you are heavily dependent on all the propulsions or the materials and the avionics and the payload design and all things, so it has to be a. So we are in the evolving stage right now. So it's you're pulling the cart before the horse. So because why the launch are not coming, most of the launches, small satellite launches are not coming to India just because of our LEO satellites launch is not coming to India because first of all we don't have a capacity. We if you go on the LEO, MEO, GEO, as Mr. Said, we have maximum capacity of PSLV or GSLV launch is more than only 7 in a year, or maximum we can go to 8 if we are better off. So we have to build the capacity first of all. Number two, for the small satellites, we need to have a supply chain. So that's we are building over the period of the time that supply chain will be built up. So at least we can serve to the secondary market, which is of course primary market will still be catered by US and Europe primarily because of their ecosystem. So once the ecosystem will build up, then we will have a supply chain, and then we will also start delivery. That will take some time.
Next is when is the Indian sub station coming up now?
That's already been announced. It is
Announced.
It is by 2035. We plan to have our space station.
And I think China is also building a virtual moon or something like that.
I'll send you my articles.
So, for the panelist, for the panelist, as we have been discussing, we're trying to frame some kind of a collaborative approach with a focus. We are dwelling on some initiatives to skill the MSMEs and also academia. So, as a summary, you can just submit off with some couple of suggestions and inputs, and then we can start.
Yeah, this is very important capacity building and working with academic institutions. We have already identified this gap. So we are trying to, first of all, building all the academic institutions into one platform. So at least their capabilities can flow back to the other things. Right now it rests with a particular academic institutions. So we are in dialogue with number of institutions, both private and government, to bring up some kind of a collaboration among the academic institutions. So where they together solve the industrial problem as well as the government problem. If the defense has some problem statement, so at least how they can look at, or industry have the problem statement, how they can look at. So we are trying to build it, and we are getting a very good response on that side.
See, resource development or particular training is definitely integral and very important part. And I just mentioned while discussing the kind of inflow of resources, particular in a manpower domain, which will be required for space industry. If we are not able to cater this requirement today, so the dream which we are having to have a 9% by 2035, definitely we are not going to achieve it. Now coming to what small steps we are taking as an organization, for all IITs, we are multiple times we are approaching them, we are giving them that what kind of course curriculum we require, so that we can utilize the output of particular IITs, even various different colleges, not only on that station, even private colleges, so that we can utilize them after they are passing out, number one. Number two, we were part of developing syllabus for, I just mentioned that IIT Indore is the only institute where undergrad course for space is available, and that is in third year, so next year will be the first batch will come out. We also basically get interns for training from electronics as well as mechanical, various backgrounds, and we do give them a training for their internship, so that we can inculcate the space culture in them or the thought process in them. So this is the most thing which we do presently. As far as recruitment is concerned, when we recruit particular people in a space domain, we do have our own in-house curriculum. So near about 6 to 7 months we keep people on the training, not only in design aspect, engineering aspect, manufacturing aspect of space. Yes, we have a limited capacity, so going forward definitely it has to be enhanced, and academia has to play a vital role in this, and definitely people and government is working on that.
Yes, Amit, you want to? Yeah.
So, Mukashi, quick question for you. Are there any specific areas that in space specifically that L&T is looking at MSME to help them out? Maybe like maybe it is in engine, maybe it is in propulsion, maybe it is in electronic, maybe it is in electronic guidance systems, control systems. I mean, these are more at subsystem level, but it could be at a smaller component level. Because you are in Pune, you are in the heart of manufacturing.
I just mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, we are in touch or in dialogue in a very advanced stage with certain OEMs to have basically satellite integration in the country. If that is successful, so that will be phase 1, and in phase 2 we will try to do multiple indigenization of that subsystem. So yes, we are working on that, awaiting the final outcome. Second, I have mentioned that very soon PSLV will be industrialized. Once it is industrialized, so our aim is to have multiple numbers, and to have multiple numbers we have to widen the supplier base. So definitely that I just mentioned while talking also, I am very clear rather as an organization, the agility which MSME has, nobody can have. Okay. The kind of new learning which MSME normally have, nobody can have. So this is the backbone of any kind of manufacturing or any kind of sector. So definitely there are the opportunities. I just mentioned the long gestation kind of sector. So we have to wait and watch. Definitely there will be business.
So we have had, I think, fruitful and useful inputs. Mr. Mukashi shared all the pain points, touch points, and also the opportunities. And thank you, Mr. Prakash sir, for also sharing the initiatives that is being taken. So just two last questions, or we just sum it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed an interesting session. I request General Pannu to please felicitate our guests. Mr. Vivek Mukashi. Mr. Anil Prakash. No, sir. Please, sir. Please. We request. And our very own Mr. Harsh Gune. In the picture, if I may also please invite Colonel Madhusudanan, who has just joined us. Thank you so much. Now we move on to the final session of today. The topic is the journey of space tech startups, opportunities, challenges, and the way forward. No, sir. The speakers are Mr. Advait Kulkarni, Director, Vasundhara Geotechnologies. I invite the speakers on the stage, please. Mr. Tushar Zadhav, Co-founder and CEO, Manastu Space. Mr. Soumya Mishra, Co-founder and CEO, Sisir Radar. Mr. Siddhesh Naik, Co-founder, Look Technologies. And Mr. Atharva Barbudhe, CEO and CTO, Cosmos One. The session will be moderated by Mr. Anirudh Rastogi, Founder and Managing Partner, Ikigai Law. May I have the speakers, please? Speakers है एक moderator है सहा कुछ I request everyone to please settle down so we could start our final session. Our speakers are ready. With this, I request the session moderator, Anirudh Rastogi, to please take it forward.
Thank you so much. I'll just wait for all of you to get seated and then start off. Hello everyone, I'm Anirudh and I welcome you to this panel on the journeys of space startups. I'm always quite excited to moderate a panel with startups. And that's largely because of my own kind of long relationship with advising startups, particularly in deep technologies. I remember the very first space client was a company popularly known as Team Indus, and for some of you who might have come across, these were guys who were participating in the Google X lunar project. I don't remember the exact name, but it was basically the challenge was to launch a rover to the moon, and a moonshot it was quite literally, but also interesting in the sense that I don't think we had any startup at that time claiming to do or any startup in the space sector really. I mean, not to my knowledge. And even conventional industry has largely been involved in component manufacturing, etc. But this was completely a different league. And these gentlemen none of them were from the aerospace background, by the way, right? So motley group who probably decided to do this over a drink one evening. But what was exciting is that this company went on to kind of do some fairly interesting things, including getting a launch contract with ISRO, which I had the honor of negotiating. And of course, I mean, they raised funds, which was difficult, and got a lot of political clearances, etc. And eventually, the mission was abandoned for various reasons. But what it did was it did inspire an entire, I think, a number of entrepreneurs to take a similar leap, and I think a lot of people from that team have gone on to set up ventures, etc. In fact, we have somebody here who was part of the team in this team back in the day. What I want to focus on in today's panel is how is the world looking different today for space startups. We are in a post-policy world. We have a regulator dedicated for private space activity. The world looks quite different, right? But on the ground, how much of it is, how much of it has changed? What are the continuing challenges for startups? What's the market looking like? What's the investment climate looking like? Are some of the themes that we would like to cover. And we have a great panel. I think we have people who represent very different segments from the space ecosystem here. I would request all of you to maybe just give an elevator pitch of your business, right? And literally just an elevator pitch. I will stop you if you go beyond. 30 seconds to explain your business and very briefly your background. I'm curious, and I think everybody would be curious on, what does it take to, it's audacious to start a space business, right? So what were your backgrounds and what kind of really got you started or even inspired you to take such a leap? Let's keep it short to a minute for each speaker, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Soumya Mishra. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CICIR Radar. CICIR Radar is primarily a synthetic aperture radar startup. We have built the world's highest resolution L-band synthetic aperture radar. We are planning to launch a constellation of SAR satellites across the frequency band. Our focus is on solving two of the problems that General Khandare sir mentioned in the morning, which is being able to see through foliage and being able to see through ground from space. The sensor of choice for both these problems are L-band SAR and P-band SAR, and these are the technologies that we are building, and we have even won an two IDEX projects for the same. As for my background, I have done my BTech, MTech in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur. Started my career off in semiconductor industry, but I am a space kid in the sense both my parents have spent like 4 decades in ISRO, so I've grown up in that ecosystem. Space has always fascinated me. The opportunity of actually being able to build a new venture in space, which I feel has opened up after the Indian space policies have evolved over the last couple of years. I think that was the right place, right time and right fit for me and my co-founders to start this company.
Thanks, Soumya. Good evening, everyone. I'm Siddhesh Naik. I'm CEO for Uluk Technologies. At Uluk, we're building satellites with a hive mind. More simply put, satellite swarms. How do you get a bunch or a cluster of satellites to work in cohesion with each other, each one of them having a different payload per se, so heterogeneous swarm. In fact, a similar project is something that I was working on earlier last year. This was part of the mission DevSpace Challenge with the Defense Space Agency as one of the nodal agency and users of this project. In terms of, and our first phase, in terms of the swarm deployment is focused towards RF geoint. So this is geolocating a variety of RF emitters, characterizing their behavior, RF fingerprinting them, so that even in a non-cooperative mode, they can be detected and ID'd and tracked upon. In terms of how my fascination for space began, it really came from my mother as a young child, and that sort of continued thereafter. I did my grad school at University of Colorado Boulder, which also happens to be Kalpana Chawla's alum school. I'm a certified astrodynamicist from there, so studied spacecraft trajectory design, optimization, that sort of work. My first small satellite was launched back in 2015. This was $1 million NASA-funded, one of the very early on science-focused missions called MINX, Miniature X-ray Solar Spectrometer, which is in fact in its 4th version now. So a fairly successful program with a lot of sort of science outcomes and so on. Between me and Adhish, my co-founder, we have a legacy of almost 15 LEO satellites now, a bunch of UAV swarms in operation with the forces, with our forces, and one of India's first solar-powered aircraft.
So yes, hello everybody. Yes, myself Vatharo. I lead this startup named as Cosmosun as a CEO and CTO. So in Cosmosun, we are trying to build world's first autonomous space station named Cosmos Station out there in low Earth orbit. So our main product into the Cosmos Station are firstly a small scale re-entry vehicle that will take something payload of about 100 to 150 kgs to low Earth orbit, and that can take it back from 100 kgs back from space back to Earth over here to use the applications like in space manufacturing and the application that will be coming mostly for the microgravity experimentation in the future basically. So what we are trying to build over there, so we are actually trying to build infrastructure out there in space so that actually if any of the company needs to get the flight heritage, any of the component, if they're building some of the sensor part or if they're trying to build any kind of payload over there, so that they can take it to space, they can test it over there and take it back from there over here right now. And when it comes to what are the almost like technology developmental stage and everything, so we are trying to cater it with the help of the robotic manipulator. So we started with the development of the inchworm robotic arm, which will be having capability of around 7 degrees of freedom, and that can just just move around it with having a modular ports out there in low Earth orbit. So mostly we are having the focus on working with the MRS technology, modular reconfigurable spacecraft technology, which tends out to be the new upcoming right now when it comes to the HOTL missions, basically human on the loop missions over there in low Earth orbit. And when it comes to the mostly sense like where is we are heading towards right now, so we mostly want to have India's first microgravity lab out there in low Earth orbit, which will be mostly focusing on much of the futuristic applications for that. So yes, basically my background over there. So I was from my teenager time only, I was mostly fascinated with the space when it comes to space science and everything around it. So I started my studying over there in SRM IST with a mechanical engineering aerospace and specialization in aerospace, but unfortunately wouldn't, how to say, being passionate with the other of the space industry, what was going on, I took a dropout in 2019 and started studying in Samara State Aerospace University in Russia. So this was one of the university which built all the series of the space station that were there in low Earth orbit in the Soviet Union era, starting from the Salyut 1 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to Mir 1, 2, and then Almaz also, and then moreover the next generation space station that was called as International Space Station over there. So while backgrounding, and combining all this knowledge into one, so we came up with a solution how to build a next generation autonomous space station out in low Earth orbit. So this was mostly a background over there, and I was also having a fascinating opportunity to working in the modular ports that were coming for the next generation space station out there in Russia. So yes, this was.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Tushar from Manastu Space. We are focusing on space sustainability, starting with the green propulsion system for satellites. So you build a satellite, we'll sell you the propulsion system to maneuver the satellite. Offering is efficient, affordable, and sustainable fuel for handling it on the ground. We've been building it for last almost 7 years. My fascination started with the space when I joined IIT Bombay. And when I got into the IIT Bombay, I saw that there's a student who are building a satellite called Pratham. Now, like if I'm doing something, it has to be these things when I joined the IIT. So after got into and then started working in the satellite, and then we launched it in 2016. So after a lot of ups and downs, we finally were able to launch the satellite on top of ISRO PSLV into the space, and that's where we found out our passion. So our interest came from that, and then that continued to formation of Manastu in 2016. So since then, we have been working very closely with the DRDO, ISRO, as well as some of the foreign customers. So idea is how do we ensure that the space remains sustainable, starting with propulsion system and then refueling as a services and deorbiting as a services for the satellite when the satellite is dead. So that's what we are doing at Manastu.
Thank you so much. Anyway, I've had the great opportunity of showcasing my startup in much detail today, so I'll not get into that. But I just talk about why I got into having a space startup. Well, I am an aerospace graduate. I have my pedigree in satellite communications and satellite automation, but after that I also have a little bit of training in satellite applications. So we've heard all of these guys, my good friends who are in the upstream market, who are putting birds in the orbit, who are putting sensors in the orbit, but I'm the guy you come to when it is about analysis. Okay, I am your guy who gives you the insight. So, that's what we are effectively doing, and I think let's take the conversation forward from there.
Thank you. So I've heard a lot of defense gigs and 4G gigs, but this is the first I'm hearing of a space gig, Soumya. Next, I want to talk about the regulatory landscape, but more than the central framework, which I'm interested in because I think that's one of the big changes we've seen in the last many years. But since we are sitting at the MCCIA Trade Tower, I want to focus on the state regulatory landscape, right? And there are a few states in India that have introduced incentives, some fairly significant. Can some of you talk about how important are these state level incentives when you are looking to set up a new business? Is that a key? Is the availability of these incentives a key consideration for you on where to set shop? Has it influenced your decisions? We'll start from there and then I'll maybe dive deeper.
So I'll go because we're looking for that. So if you see in the country, some of the states who have been very proactive is Telangana, especially, then especially around Hyderabad. Tamil Nadu has been a big way, especially through TIDCO, Bangalore, Karnataka government, and then the Gujarat government. So these four state government has been very proactive. UP, overall defense, definitely pushing the space along with the defense thing. So some of the biggest, most important benefit has been the first is the incentives in the lands. So as the startups are going towards more maturity where they are looking to set up the long-term manufacturing facility, long-term testing facility, the land becomes a very important expenditure. So a lot of states, especially the TIDCO, is offering 90% discounts to the startup and attracting into their space park that they are building up around the new spaceport that is coming up by ISRO. So that is a very significant move if you are building a hardware. And then not just that thing, they have attracted a lot of electronic industry also around it, so that tomorrow satellites will also probably get built around it, and then immediately it will be shipped to the launch pad, which will also come close to that, and then you have a whole ecosystem around it. So that's how they are. And then of course the area Hyderabad overall has a good IT ecosystem. So that fuels into the downstream application what is mentioning on. So that has worked out well. Along with that, the lot of testing facilities has been supported by a lot of government. So TITCO especially, the Gujarat government is also looking to set it up. Along with the ISRO is DRDO facility, the state government are focusing on it. The skill is one of the big challenges. What are the programs that you are running with your state level? UP government has a very good program with closely working with IIT Kanpur and one of the university sir was mentioning in the morning, Brad sir, someone. So skill development is another. Another is ease of doing business. So if you are setting up some facility, along with the how to get the clearances, because if you are handling some fuel, handling some chemicals, how do you easily get the permission in terms of handling those chemicals, getting the permission for fire NOC, your pollution and all those things. So all those clearances, there are some 15-20 clearances that you need. How quickly can we do that? So those has been a factor that this ecosystems has developed, and of course the legacy of say ISRO in Ahmedabad has helped to promote their ecosystem, this thing. So in Maharashtra we believe because the Pune has a lot of manufacturing facility and Mumbai is coming up with the third new Mumbai, where there is a lot of financial focus also. We believe there is a huge opportunity to create it is almost that area is centered to Maharashtra, Mumbai as well as Pune, the new Mumbai that is coming up. So that can be a huge major hub for the space and defense manufacturing as well as the R&D. And Pune having a lot of talent because of, as we are hearing since yesterday. So that talent plus manufacturing system plus a dedicated focus on the may not be directly a corridor because everyone wants to build a corridor, but dedicated infrastructure and dedicated support and push for that can be a go long way. That's what we believe.
So clearly, you've named a couple of interesting, important incentives and a few states that have gone down that path. But what could Maharashtra do different? One, is there a need to do different, or is it just a matter of replicating what's worked well for other states? What should we be focused on? Siddhesh, do you want to take that?
So if you allow me, I'll have a comment on the earlier question as well. So being part of Team Indus, this was from the last decade. Just a broad comment on the regulatory landscape, major, huge change, right? When we started out, or when we were working as part of Indus, I mean, you know this better than anybody else. There was no regulatory framework at all. At least in terms of now, I think it's sort of path half traveled, where at least there's a framework now. In terms of in-space, there's a mechanism to address a lot of these challenges. To be specific, some of the frequencies that these satellites are going to operate in, it's one thing to do under sort of a garb of a science satellite or a ham radio satellite and so on, but how are we going to operate commercially and so on? I think that clarity is emerging because the framework is in place, not just the frequency, but a lot of other things. It's sort of we're on the right direction, right? But more needs to be done. In terms of specific incentives and schemes and infrastructure and so on, I think Tushar has beautifully addressed a lot of very key aspects. Maharashtra is my home state, but I chose to sort of set up shop in Bangalore at the moment, and two primary factors, right? First is sort of talent. Where's talent available? And in a way, it's sort of a chicken egg sort of situation, right? Talent sort of coalesces around ecosystem, not just in terms of funding, infrastructure, a lot of other varied factors. Now, having said that, the southern states, eastern states, they've had a very strategic advantage in terms of a lot of national labs having their presence there, right? With those national labs, there has been an ecosystem in terms of secondary, tertiary vendors and so on, and that ecosystem has developed. This was sort of the last 2 decades or so. In the current decade, we're seeing startups sort of build on top of that momentum. So in that sense, I wouldn't be very harsh on how we've done as a state. Of course, more needs to be done. In terms of a specific scheme or something, I would say as part of defense or space startups, fund access to funds to sort of get to a PMF stage or even sort of an MVP stage, first the quantum of funds required are sort of very different than any other consumer or e-com or traditional business, one. Second is the risk is also higher, right? So, and at the moment, we sort of all dependent on VC or PE or sort of those kind of mechanisms. If the state government could come and incentivize some of those, and these doesn't even have to be in terms of doling out free grants, but in terms of collateral-free loans or certain debt mechanisms, that again will be a huge boost. And again, from a larger perspective, while a lot of other cities and other areas are doing well in terms of nurturing and fostering these startups, we all know for sort of the larger rounds, everybody descends down to the financial capital, right? So I think the gap that needs to be addressed is how do we tackle sort of the 0 to 1 journey, because 1 to N journey is something that we've handled fairly well as a state.
I do a lot of work with the drones industry as well, and we're actually helping a key state write their drones policy right now. And as a part of that process, we ended up comparing drones policies introduced by various states and some fairly comprehensive, well thought through documentation as well. But when we did an assessment of which policy has attracted how much investment, we saw that some of the states that have the most activity in drones are ones that do not even have a policy. Right? So there was actually no correlation between a qualitative policy with actual investment. And I wonder then, should we probe a little deeper and see, well, in the space ecosystem, what is working for the 3 or 4 states that you mentioned? And does Maharashtra then need to follow the same path or do it differently? So anyone who's not already spoken, but you can also comment on the earlier questions and then take this up.
So the states that have very aggressive and positive policies, particularly with respect to space that Tushar mentioned, right? Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Karnataka, Telangana, now they have decades of space heritage because of various ISRO centers being there and their subsystem supplier ecosystem also being there. So they have built on top of what they already know. In case of Maharashtra, I mean the genesis of ISRO happened with Bharat. So the grandmother of the space ecosystem is from Maharashtra. Now I do not know how that traced back and how that legacy can be leveraged. But one thing that Maharashtra has above and beyond the other states is its access to finance. And where I think every space startup, particularly except for the downstream ones because they are minting money, but the upstream ones, they will always, their complaints will again come down to different kinds of funding, grants, mechanism, and all of that. So maybe that is the market gap per se, and the leverage that you have in terms of having access to finances, where you can meet that and find a nice fit where you can get space companies to come into Maharashtra.
Yes, I will take this Maharashtra stance in something very different way into it. Just talking about totally about how to do business out there upstream only. So right now the emerging tech is there like in space manufacturing, where you want to mostly focus on pharmaceutical that can be manufactured out there in space for earth applications, so that you can go over there and you can do it. As Maharashtra has been how to say, we are having much quite good pharmaceutical industry out here. If you take the example of the Pune or the Mumbai or is built out there in Goa region right now. So I think so if we come up with a solution where we are talking only about the upstream right now, where we are taking the stance of in-space manufacturing or the applications around it right now, or we take only stance of pharmaceuticals manufacturing in low Earth orbit right now. So it can come up with how to say very good how to say lucrative for the companies like any companies like like Cipla or any of them like Serum Institute to pump money into this sector and to come up with a solution which will be mostly focusing on upstream business of it. And we can mostly see like in Maharashtra what is happening right now. We are trying to make it right now, but we are not in that verge to to complete it right now. It's full-fledged with how to say policies out into it or the stance into it. So I think so we can come up with the new how to say where we cannot take example of the 4 states what they have done actually into it, because mostly they're focusing on the launch vehicle. When you take the stance of TIDCO, or because they are coming up with a new spaceport into it, so they are coming mostly with the launch vehicle. If we mostly focus on totally on the upstream and keep the stance little bit on the downstream as being a how to say inform is like you're this one IT capital out here in Maharashtra right now as Pune. So this thing can be work out into that sense, basically, like combined policy will work over here. I think so.
Yeah, I'm curious, Advait, as you comment on the earlier questions and this one, also what kind of incentives would the downstream industry want to see?
Okay, I'll start with few comments. So we've all talked about how different states have taken their own journey into space, and of course it's very rightly pointed out that they have gone down their path based on what they had. So they had their own legacy, and that's what they leveraged. If Maharashtra goes on the same thing, I think we are destined to doom, because we don't have that as yet, and the that wagon has already passed. So let's not try to retraverse the same path that has been taken. Instead, what can be done? I mean, there have been few very interesting conversations that we've been having. Is that why don't we? So we have a 5 trillion economic dream overall nationally. If you break it down, Maharashtra has been announcing of a 1 trillion economy of its own. Maybe the numbers are different now, but even if you think about the 1 trillion economy, can Maharashtra leverage the space technology to assist that 1 trillion economic dream? So more invest into value-added services or value additions that the state can take up, and then probably just consume it on their own and give it to the rest of the ecosystem. So, Maharashtra, the word, if you break it down, Rashtra means a nation, so it's a nation in itself. So it has the potential, to consume whatever is being developed on its own for its own development. And which I think, coming to your final question, the downstream market, the state itself is not doing that effectively. So it's not just the downstream market, which is the EO market, but also in many other ways, like effective use of comms, maybe effective use of downlinking stations. Why can't we set up our own downlinking stations? Can that be a commodity that we can give it as a service to others, right? So these are some of the innovative things that we'll have to think about. Go outside the path that has been traversed, and then look at how space can actually contribute to the 1 trillion economy dream that we have, and it can support our other dreams as a state. So coming to that, look at how the downstream market can be supported by data policies, data dissemination policies, data sharing policies. How are you storing data? How are you exchanging data between different users? Is the data that is being generated reused by somebody else, or somebody else is paying the same amount of money or even more for the same amount of data, right? So these are the sort of thought processes that we'll have to get
Very
into.
interesting. Any other radical ideas on the panel, Sudesh?
Only because you've egged me on for a radical idea, I'll place this here. Sort of picking on what Advait said, we are a nation, sort of from a geographical expanse, if we see, fairly big. We have a coastline. We have significant forest cover. We have very rapidly developing urban clusters. So, safe to say, rapidly changing landscape, right? Now we can talk about constellations and what should be done at a national level and so on. But can we as a state put our own satellite in space, or a few satellites in space? From a downstream perspective, you want to measure impact, democratize the data, right? Let the government sort of foot the bill for the hardware or sort of operations. Give that data free of cost to sort of everybody who's downstream, who can prepare a lot of proof of concepts, right? Subsequently, let them sort of develop a data model. Now, just to put context, right? If automobile manufacturer in China, and I'll just quote here, Geely, can aspire to have a PNT constellation, and a lot of sort of varied examples of similar nature, both in the eastern and the western hemisphere. It's sort of not such a radical idea for a state to sort of have their own satellite, and not just one. One of them could be geared towards the coastal monitoring. The second one could be towards, very specifically towards forest and urban. A third one could be towards agri, right? The sort of financial muscle and power of our state, these wouldn't be very sort of taxing on, or sort of very small amounts to sort of spend in terms of kickstarting the whole sector. Again, something that none of the other states have done, or probably are in the process of doing it. We could jumpstart that.
Fascinating. We'd love to discuss this offline with you.
And ask companies to build their satellite in Maharashtra.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly. Great. But one question I asked before and nobody answered. Has any one of you actually being in, you've actually taken a decision to set up in a state because of its policy? Interesting. So we definitely need to do more than what Telangana and Andhra Pradesh have already done, right?
But these policy changes have come very recently, and a lot of us have set up companies before those policy changes came in the picture. So there were other factors that went into that decision making per se. But going forward, let's say for us, if we think of whenever we'll be building our own AIT facility, we will be taking into cognizance which state will give us the most practical benefit for doing that.
Right.
Again, a small point there, unlike I mean, if you just take the drone industry example, there's a lot of policy which has come up from other states. They've established drone corridors, a very sort of, rigorous testing areas and things like that. There's a sort of direct one-on-one sort of impact there. I think space always sees sort of the impact is sort of on a larger time scale. So whatever policy changes have come out at a state level, I think we'll have to spend some time to see what impact it is.
Yeah, I'll be honest, even with the drone policies, there's a lot of good stuff on paper, but actual implementation in terms of setting up these sophisticated drone corridors, etc., is still some way to go. So the operationalization of these policies is still lacking, and I think the latter is going to be as or more important than just putting a document in place. Also, I think worth mentioning that Pune also has this kind of strong automotive ecosystem with testing facilities, etc. There's some gains over there as well. Now, moving from state to central, right? Central regulatory landscape. We live in a post-policy world now, and while of course very, very promising developments, but what continues to be a challenge for space startups in the country today? So maybe we can start with you. And
so one of the largest challenges that a downstream company will always face is building practical solutions. So at the end of the day, the user is interested in let's say a satellite image. Is that satellite image solving my problem? I don't care how clearly a vehicle is visible in that image, but is it solving my practical problem is a fair question. Now, to build a realistic solution on top of it, you don't just depend on the image data. There are other data sets that are required to sort of fuse and make sense out of all of that. In most of these cases, in the geospatial domain, large-scale data sets like this, the government is a custodian of such data sets, and practical solutions will only be built if this large-scale data is made available in a central sort of a format. Well, of course, regulate it all you want. There can be all sorts of regulation in how you access that data, in how you use the data, where is that data disseminated, is it only used for government applications and whatnot, but at least make it available in a central repository sort of a thing, which is accessible to everybody, where POCs can be built and practical end solutions can be developed. Now, I'll just give a very small example. That's something we experienced in one of the GeoSmarts that happened in Hyderabad. Last year, the GeoSmart 2023, we actually had, sir, a good opportunity of taking 60 Sarpanch to the GeoSmart. 60 Sarpanch to GeoSmart. Now, this was first of its kind where rural India was getting exposed to the geospatial who's who and the technology. It was very interesting that these few of these 60 guys had a common problem of forest fire, and they literally cornered one of the technology giants and started asking left, right and center questions about how you would use satellite technology for assessing forest fires. The gentleman who was getting cornered was getting deeper into the corner because he did not have the answer of what would you do for predicting the fire and controlling the fire. All he was telling ki you will get a patch analysis, burn scar ka aapko andaza mil jayega, lekin the user, the rural user was like, jalne se pehle bata dena chahiye na, jalne ke baad kya karunga? So you spend all the millions of dollars that you want in sending these birds and having fancy SWIRs, near infrareds. At the end of the day, it is going to give you an impact assessment. It's not going to help you control that fire. And that is the quintessential question that the farmer was asking. What if that fire comes from that forest slope to my farm and takes my farm out? That is my problem. If you are going to solve that, and this is what he said, if you are going to solve that, मैं तेरे को पैसा देगा. This is what he saw, and that's where the conversation ended. So, a practical solution is not coming out of the satellites that we are sending, or whatever we are doing. A practical solution will only come when data sets are fused together. Multiple data sets, different approaches of collecting data sets. Maybe it is sensor based, maybe it is local camera based sensor. Right? You have network of cameras, you have sensors put as a network, and those are tipping and queuing satellite. I don't know, but there will be different multitudes of data sets coming together and then forming a solution. So, by and large, bottom line, we will have to sort of at a regulatory levels come up with a structure to disseminate different data sets. Yeah.
But I still don't understand, will that answer the farmer's question कि भाई fire पता चल गया फिर क्या करोगे? You still need to work very closely with your fire department, your disaster management department and all that.
That's a conversation we should get into.
So that is a little bit still. So I'm saying that data will not be answered. Data along with the actionable people, that they should have that access to data so that they can take the action rather than sarpanch. So that's a different discussion. So my problem, orders. You show the money, we'll bring in more money, everything else we'll do. We'll build them technology, we'll train the people, everything else. Government, and let's be very clear, 70-80% of the space investment is done by the defense. Okay, so let's not kid each other that the money will come from someone else. So government investment has to be there if we really want to put in the space assets. And that has to be mainly focused from the defense. And once that is done, the rest of the things, if you show the money, people will build up the facilities. People will build the skill. People will build the hardware. Of course, it will take some time, but that will for sure happen. So, concern, orders.
No, I will give a stance on how this central collaboration with the Maharashtra and all. So I got some point into it. What is still not in this ecosystem right now? We don't have rigorous testing robotics facility. We don't have any kind of rigorous testing like when it comes to edge computing. We don't have laboratories for it. We can create, like state government can create in kind of how to say next generation robotics laboratory over there. So that you don't need to give them liquidity any of the advantage, like we are giving free of cost land or we are giving this institute, that institutes. If you create the laboratories like how to say a next generation robotics laboratory, next generation AI and machine learning laboratories, then having any kind of laboratories that will be needed to the industry, that will be needed in space sector. So that companies will come over there, they will get a stance around it basically as a properly stance into it. It's like basically if they want to manufacture something out there, or if you want to test something out there in this facility, they can get it done in that laboratory and they can make it as they will be having a proof of concept ready over there, and they can get the land over there and they can just start around it basically. And one of the point when it was we were filing when we were how to say thinking about protein crystals manufacturing. So for it basically we seen that we need biosafety lab 3 as well as 4th class into it. BSL 3 and BSL 4, there are we can say 6 labs in Pune itself right now, and these labs aren't anywhere else in the ecosystem they are existing right now. So when it comes to second stance into how to say using the laboratories what already is existing over here, if we come up with some kind of initiative where Maharashtra government anybody can take into it, BSL 3, BSL 4, how to say, because getting access to the lab is very tough into it basically. So if government initiative starts into it, so we can just use this lab and we can come up with the new products around it.
Thanks, Athar. So before I come to sort of the major challenges or problems, 2 points. One is we have to be very cognizant of what we expect from each platform, right? There are strategic platforms, there are tactical platforms. Satellites sort of play one role, a long endurance drone will play a different role, and so on. So we have to be measured in terms of what we're expecting from each platform. One. Second is the downstream and upstream are sort of two different dinosaurs, right? Two different elephants in the room that have to be addressed in a very different manner. From a downstream, and I'll sort of park myself in the upstream at the moment. Reiterating what Tushar said, I think orders are sort of the biggest pain or sort of the problem area. A lot of industry stalwarts who sort of, and ecosystem stalwarts who sort of making that major change are sitting here, and I'm sort of acknowledging that a lot of work has been done, but a lot more needs to be done as well. From a policy perspective, just take an example. IDEX started with typical disk challenges, 1.5 CR grant. Problems or gaps in it were identified, got addressed with open challenge. Further gaps got addressed with IDEX Prime. Further challenges got addressed with IDEX Aditi, right? I've not seen a ecosystem like what the current ecosystem is, which is so open to feedbacks, rapidly sort of incorporating those feedbacks and sort of plugging the gaps and sort of solving, right? So for that, I think a lot of people who are sitting in this room deserve our kudos for doing that. Having said that, of course, a lot of thing needs to be done as well. The Mission Dev Space Challenge from last year was a fantastic move, right? A lot of my friends from across the globe were flabbergasted in terms of how does one set of challenges address LV upstream, satellite upstream, a lot of downstream challenges as well, right? Is it the best of way to do things? Probably not, but then somebody really took on the onus to sort of even try out something like that. So from my perspective, very, very happy and glad that something like that happened. Orders, labs, no access to labs, testing facilities, etc., etc. I think as entrepreneurs, we have to solve major part of those challenges. We have to depend on the ecosystem or in terms of government on very specific pain points. I think orders is that pain point which we as entrepreneurs can't solve ourselves. That's something that only the government and setup can solve. Reiterating what Tushar said, majority of the space, upstream and downstream business, so far at least, is DNI, right? DNI is a very standard sort of Western term, defense and intelligence business. Case in point there, let's look at Planet Revenues, publicly listed company. The books are out there. Every quarter it's getting revised in terms of how much percentage of revenue comes from DNI, right? It started with let's image the world and sort of, the applications will go on and so forth. Revenue still comes from one customer or one sector. So if that's something that can, if that sector in our country can jumpstart it, I think it's sort of probably the lowest hanging fruit there.
So two things I want to add. One, just touching upon the it is for putting some facility somewhere, but they effectively sees that can help boost the top line, which give us more sales. So let's say, for example, the upstream downstream relationship is going to be that the downstream is going to be the first customer of upstream data. So let's say if you incentivize the other private companies who are natural customers for a certain segment to preferably buy services and data from Indian startups and companies, that itself becomes a natural boost for the ecosystem and doesn't necessarily put a drain on the government per se, that the government has to fund everything, right? So that is one way you can go around, maybe looking at the dynamics of the industries and seeing which parts you can optimize to or incentivize to generate more business for the other parts of the industry. The second, I'm going to be very specific away from these kinds of regulations or more into like ITU kind of regulations. We need to start thinking of like Siddesh and I both were working on like radio frequency based satellites. His RF sensors, ours is synthetic aperture radar. So what ITU bands are allocated for what kind of use cases, they're very important. We need to start thinking of what works for us. So like if you had come across an FCC documentation on the expansion of bandwidth in the X-band region for radar satellites. As per FCC, 1 gigahertz is available in the X-band region for SAR satellites. That automatically translates into 15 centimeter resolution SAR imagery in X-band. And X-band is very good for USS theaters of war, wherever they want to go and do their stuff. But from an Indian perspective, let's say L-band, P-band is what gives us foliage penetration, ground penetration. If I look at the restrictions today, in P-band, I can only give you 15 meter resolution if I comply with the ITU restrictions. But if you open up the bandwidth a little bit over there, then we can give you 3 meter, 5 meter resolution in P-band, which would be unheard of in the world. And your radar signals do not necessarily interfere with communication signals. They're like the packets of signals are completely different. So that is not a major concern per se. So we should think of like ITU based regulations that benefit our particular use cases.
Okay, fascinating. I have two more questions, but I'm very cognizant of time. So I'm going to now compel all of you guys to respond in only 2 lines, no more. My first is about the investment climate and how it's changing. When I was advising Team Indus, I remember that these first set of investors were people who were probably just interested in being part of this moonshot. It was, you're doing something audacious, never being done before, will probably not see the light of the day also, but I don't care. I want to be a part of this. To now where investors, I'm sure, are asking the hard questions, right? Is this ever going to pay off? How is it, I want to know if you have investors, if you have raised funds, do you have investors from first-time space investors? And what is the conversation, I mean, how easy or hard is that conversation? What's driving the kind of investments into space, basically? So, starting from next question.
Yeah. So I won't comment on how the climate is changing because we've been always bootstrapped and ours is revenue first approach. So thank God for that, and we've been there well.
You're also downstream.
So it's not an easy business if you think about it.
That's not what I'm saying.
Nah, but you've compelled me to answer in 2 sentences. Otherwise, I've given you an anecdote of.
We'll talk over drinks after.
Yeah. I'll just tell you in short, I have to spend a lot of time educating my customer first, and that I used to do with my own money and my time. But now I have also floated a foundation for doing that from others' money. But anyway, that's using others' money. But okay, that's a different conversation. But what I was actually trying to say is the investment market or the climate in India, or the investors, the new investors who want to get into the space race, there is a lot of them who want to get on the wagon of the space industry, but they are asking questions that are not pertinent and relevant to the space sector. They are looking at seed investments. They say that they want to come at the seed level, and they are asking for balance sheets. That is not how it works. If you are coming in for seed, you are looking at the idea, you are looking at the team, you are looking at the founders, and you are looking at the pedigree. You are not here for the growth.
2 lines.
Frankly speaking, startups don't want to raise the money if we have a customers. But I also want to do something what he's trying to do. But unfortunately, investors don't know. So I won't blame them because they have never done it. So someone who is doing the managing money, asking them to understand the writing, asking the right question about the space, it's very difficult. So I have a sympathy for them, but it's a hard work for us also to do that. So I'll take the other approach.
Sure.
Wishes are trying to become as a private equity fund where they want everything, as a starting wishes. Wishes are trying to become, a little bit like a private equity fund where they want everything as ready-made in front of them, like you show us this, and I think so they should potentially, they should look in a different way where they are actually adding value into it basically. So this can be my stance because, as how to say, having some of the conversation I had with the VCs part and the funding part right now. And second stance will be mostly not that much, how to say, the analysts who are coming, they're just reading the articles on the internet, not having a fully fledged, how to say, in-depth knowledge about the industry right now. They should go deep and deep, the VCs first, and they should then jump into it. Like, this is a sector where they want 100x return of it. So then only they should jump into it. Otherwise, it won't be very skeptical around it.
Thanks. I'm in the process of raising funds, so I can only speak in terms of what my current experience is. I think nobody's asked me for a balance sheet, but everybody wants me to turn EBITDA positive in 2 years, right? Now the reality of business is 2 years is what I need to even get my first satellite or cluster in space, right? Then there's a period for me to find a PMF. Then there's a period where we can now start projecting with sort of certain levels of confidence in terms of how my business, what my right business models are and so on. So I think in terms of investors who've already invested in space companies, there has been a discovery of sorts saying that DNI is the major customer and sort of the other civilian and commercial uptake is yet to happen. So then the natural question has been, has the DNI sector placed orders on upstream, which at least from an open forum perspective, they haven't. One. Second is in terms of investors who don't have a legacy in investment in space and defense. I think they have a more positive outlook. The policy change or the policy announcement that came just few quarters ago was a welcome change, right? Everybody is gung-ho about it. The ecosystem is upbeat about it. I think what everybody is waiting now is for the next step or the sort of the graduation to happen, right? And not necessarily in terms of orders, but also in terms of whatever results or things that have come out of those policies, everybody wants to see results. So I think even the sort of suborbital launches, even smaller satellite launches in terms of technology demonstrators and so on will go a long way in reinforcing their sort of commitment and confidence in the ecosystem as well. So I think, and again, you can't sort of blame the investor for whatever their metric is, right? Everybody has their own thesis. What the ecosystem can do is sort of give out, sort of lay confidence in terms of and possible ROI in terms of laying out what the vision from a DNI perspective is, or what the potential order size could be and potential satellite size.
Let's also count our blessings per se, like the investment climate in space and defense today is much better than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. The guys who started space companies in the early 2010s, you should talk to them and see their stories. Like they really struggled to pursue their passion. Most people would have just given up in a couple of months or so, and there are folks who have pushed through that for like almost 5-10 years. Having said that, and this interest is going to increase with time, we must understand, we must read between the lines of what the investors are asking for, looking for. They will obviously ask you for balance sheet and EBIT and when will you do all of that. But what a VC investor particularly is looking for is a high probability of exit in one way or the other in 4 to 5 years, right? Now, if your ecosystem has enough number of companies and few success stories which have made it big, that means your exit options are not just like IPO or becoming cash flow positive. If you have built IP but you're not able to figure out the business, but there are potential buyers in the market, then there are exit options. So as more companies enter into space, as there are more relationships built between the legacy companies like L&T and new age startups, as a few startups become very big, I think the investor fear will also get allayed over a period of time.
Look, I'm currently advising on 3 rounds, 2 in space, 1 in defense. And what I'm seeing is that there is generally an increased interest in the last couple of years at a seed, a pre-series A, maybe a series A level. But if you're not going to see the next series B and series C, then these angels and the series A investors who are going to burn their fingers, not get an exit, are also going to lose interest. And then there are the larger rounds which are happening. And I think there is somebody who has to provide the bridge, helping you move from a series A to the larger round stage. How do we make that happen? What role can the state play in that by, say, state venture funds that can match certain investment amounts, etc. I think we'll need that kind of ecosystem support as well.
So quick note on that aspect, right? I think from a policy perspective, the FDI rules are an attempt to address that in terms of unlocking access to sort of larger capital with sort of and associated risks. So I think policy-wise, it's sort of addressed to an extent. Again, as we say, the proof is in eating the pudding. So when some of us get there, we'll sort of either ascribe to it or say it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think I would like to add to that, I think the one thing that will enthuse the entire ecosystem is demand clarity. Let's take a very particular example of Tushar's company, right? So they build propulsion systems. When an investor asks him, how many propulsion systems are you going to sell in 3 years? He has no basis of answering that question, because to answer that question, he needs to know how many satellites are going to go up. And a satellite company will not be able to answer that question unless they know how many satellites are needed or being bought by either the government or private ecosystem, unless the satellite company has raised enough money and said, oh, you know what, forget the rest of the people, I'll put up 100 satellites of my own and figure out the business. But that's not going to happen because, that kind of money is not floating around in the market right now. So demand clarity, if it can be figured out, even in terms of how much coverage we want, what kind of use cases are there, how much revisit is required, that itself is enough, I think, to enthuse the overall ecosystem, especially from an investment perspective.
Thank you. So I'm going to can my last question, and I'm going to open the floor for questions from the audience. I could see several hands. Yeah, please. Oh, do you want to?
See, firstly, all of you who are on the stage, you know me. And I know you individually, right? Okay. And I've seen you grow. But I have certain points to remove the pessimism. Now, first point, you all are startup designers. You are designers. You are not commercial guys. But you have a whole lot of responsibility to raise money. Now, who's going to give you money? Now, when we've heard you talk about what is the state doing, what is the center doing, what is the private investor, what is the VC doing? You know, we started a small experiment, and Anil ji is here. You know, when you have to get an entire ecosystem in the nation to change, various generations have to be involved in that. That is starting from what General Pannu and me are, right down to whoever is the youngest out of you. There was one space congress in Delhi, some of you attended, and people asked us, when Anil Prakash ji invited the minister from Madhya Pradesh who was Minister for Science and Technology. Why? That is the adult education program that you have to do. Because he is the one who is going to impress upon the state to release funds, to budget it. Have we done that in Maharashtra? So there is something which, you know, you have to do more than that. I am not talking about you. I am talking about the entire ecosystem. Second example. Tushar had come to me, and the people who are controlling the funds don't understand his project at all. They are looking at a quick return which won't happen. So the finance environment, the people who are controlling the funds, they also need to get educated. Now, who's going to do that? This is where we look at organizations like MCCI to run certain programs for people who are controlling the system. You are just one small speck in the entire canvas. The third point I have, when you look at mentors, and not you guys, but when I look at even the bigger companies, they look at people from the defense, because the point which you mentioned, maximum funding comes from defense and intelligence. And the moment they look at a defense retired person, they look at him as a salesman. He will not get you a single order. Believe me, I am willing to bet my entire pension on that. Because a soldier cannot sell anything. Soldier can't buy also. But he can give you plenty of gyan. So please take that gyan and utilize it properly. So that is the other part. And when you look at kind of people who need to advise you, there are some people who've been in the system in space or intelligence who know the pain point of the user. Now, again coming to the issue which Advait you mentioned about forest fires. I'll give you a use case of Uttarakhand. You all know how much of forest fire damage is happening there? Okay. So what is the solution? So you have silos. Here itself on the stage, upstream, downstream silos. He's talking, you're making money, you're talking of your pinpoints. So that is the approach that is going wrong, where a satellite as a service can give you detection. And if you've had this detection for 5 years, 10 years, that data, and you put AI, you know exactly in this month where does the fire start. So you'll be prepared for it. That is one. Australia is doing it. Australia's bulk of the revenue gets generated from the sheep. So how is it that they don't have, they have wildfires, but they don't have those fires where the sheep are to graze? Yes, they have that, and they have all those details coming onto the farmer's mobile. I've seen it happening myself. Okay. So your point that आग नहीं लगना चाहिए, I agree with you. अगर आग लग गया, then do what? Now that is the end solution. Again, we don't have. So we are working with some people in the aviation industry where we say, why can't we have not the land-based fire department, but somebody from the air who can do it. And they go get the water from the lake, that is an aircraft or a heavy drone. So that means your entire link can succeed only when you have a fire extinguisher in the end. So again, you've got to work on that. So to make your product sell, you must have another guy who's finally going to resolve that problem. So please go beyond what you're looking at and don't get disgusted that nobody's buying. Nobody's buying because he can't see the end of the problem from where you start. So I give you an example of adult education, I give you an example of all this. So if you actually start looking at it, please think big. Don't stop at your balance sheet. So maybe in subsequent such session, we should be looking at beyond your own small little startup. And again, Anirudh, people like you possibly have the policy advocacy issues where you pick up a lot of things from here and give it to the government, give it to them, use it on social media, energize the environment to say, if we have to embrace technology, we have to embrace technology end to end. If you're not able to embrace it end to end, we all will be running in all directions and not knowing where have we reached. So that is the point I thought I'll make here.
Sir, if I may, I'll add one more thing. I think it's important that Advait, you brought up a very interesting point that the use case will drive the value, right? I think everybody else, you are building you are building the infrastructure that will drive the use cases that the downstream applications will drive, right? And I feel that if you all don't work as a collective, you will die as individuals. Okay? And it is bound to happen. I've seen it happen many number of times. This is a very high investment business. It's a very high cash burn type of business, right? And you pointed out very correctly, Soumya, is the fact that a tax break is immaterial, to be honest with you, because it's not cash in the bank. Cash flow drives your company. If you can't pay your employees, if you can't pay your creditors, you don't exist as a business. You're not a viable business. You're not a going concern, right? I think therein lies the biggest thing. Cash is the king. Remember that, tattoo it in your brain, because that is what is going to save you from going, belly up. But it's important to note that he is going to get enabled by all of you guys working together. So he has to feed all of you as well. Okay. So I think you have to make sure, and this is an ecosystem, and that's why I keep on saying that we have to buy from ourselves first, right? Rather than going and buying from everyone else. I was looking up at some of the metrics in 2023, 2024 as the amount of money that was spent on space, technology. About 80% of the money was spent on data analytics. Okay. Only 10% of money was spent on launch vehicles and infrastructure and satellites. Okay. So imagine that is where the intelligence is being driven out, and that is where the opportunity also is. So he's going to be the cash cow. Trust me. So keep hold on to him. That's the most important part. But I think that's what I'll say. And bootstrapping is the right way to go. You have to figure it out.
Advait, just one more point before you say. Another thing is to have, on one end you say situational awareness, right? Economic situational awareness is also important. Do you know that in India there is so much of money? Then why is it not coming to you? Have we not knocked at the right door? Possibly, yes. Are we only looking at banks? Yes. Are we looking at VCs? Yes. Are we looking at all VCs? No. Recently, I had a dialogue, and I'll share with you, because I kept wondering, so much of money is there which is being generated. Then where is it going? Obviously, it is going in some marriages, but where else is it going? So, I spoke to a few people from the Jain community. They have an organization known as JITO, J-I-T-O. Ask them, They say लड़ाई के लिए कुछ नहीं देंगे. You are not going for war. I'm sure they'll give you. But somebody has to knock their door and ask them that ours is a non-kinetic issue. So why don't you fund us? Otherwise they'll spend it here and there, and again we are back to square one. So my point here is, let's be more imaginative. Let's see what is not in that Western document. Jito is not in the Western document.
I'll just make a quick point. Amit sir, you said that usability of the technology is at the end of the day going to drive everything. And recognizing that, in fact, we have started making institutional effort towards creating capacity with the user, the last mile user, to at least understand the technology first, and that all of this is available for you. Right? So we have made an institutional attempt to just go out and tell, in the case of India, that is the rural India, to tell the rural India that the government has spent millions of dollars, for that matter billions of dollars, to make a lot of data available, and for that matter for free. So it is up to the last mile user to start consuming, and that is where the consumption will drive the rest of the ecosystem. Because the more the consumption of daily consumption of data starts happening, probably people start using remote sensing as much as they use Google Maps. That is when the entire ecosystem will get invigorated. But I think institutional efforts will have to go into that.
But it depends, otherwise it also depends upon the use case. And I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we
of course,
can
of
kind
course.
of take this offline because
Right.
it may not be interesting for everyone. But the point is, why is Google Maps interesting? Because you want to go from point A to point B.
Yep.
And you can't remember the directions for the, I can't remember anything for that matter. But the whole point is, it has to be something which is useful to that person
Yes,
on a
yes.
day-to-day basis.
Yes.
It has to attach in its life cycle somewhere, right? So, as long as you find a use cases where don't be a tech in search of a problem. Okay, because right now that's what I feel it is. It is a tech that is in search of a problem. All cool, groundbreaking techs are that way. They are techs in search of a problem. But I think you have to flip the hat a little bit and start thinking, okay, what are my problems? I mean, the forest fire is an amazing problem. Okay, you take temperature, you take number of days of heat. Okay, you take sustained amount of night temperatures, things like that. You put all that together along with the geosensing pictures, multispectral pictures, you can start predicting fires. It's not rocket science. We've got the tech, right? So I feel that use cases has to drive, so, and if you make it a part of your day-to-day life, it will catch on. People will pay 100 rupees is nothing.
Okay, fascinating panel, but it's also 6:15. I'm sorry, we'll have to take these discussions outside.
I'll make the last
We
point.
have
I'll make the
been-
last
I
point.
have- there lot of so
No, 1 minute. So I'll make the last point here. Number one, let us imagine a scenario where in the financial ecosystem there are no Ps and VCs anymore, and we'll have to imagine that. Why do I say that? Just last month there was a report that came out from the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States. That report said that any money coming in from foreign PE and VCs which are foreign to the US into the US strategic tech ecosystem, that company will be debarred from US government projects. Okay, why is that? So the biggest proponent of globalization is now getting protectionist, paranoid. So there is paranoia in the system. What has happened over the past few years is that if you look at categorically between 2014 and now, in the early years of startup India, we had money coming in from South Korea, we have money coming in from Japan, SoftBank and et al. They collapsed. They stopped giving money. There is no more SoftBank money coming into India anymore. Then we were looking to the Europeans and the Israelis. Suddenly we got struck with COVID. European Israeli money dried out completely. What we are left with right now is only the US based investors. No, I'm talking about the institutionalized venture capital. There's no other money coming in. Chinese also we have blocked. So the only source is this. Now we are coming in an era where perhaps there are trends of de-dollarization. There are waves of de-dollarization happening. So there is going to be a river which is going to dry up. You may stare at the river for a very long time. Perhaps there will be one torrential rain, that river will get flooded, but it will again dry out immediately. So that's why, again, I'm going back to the logo which is up there, that perhaps we will go through, all of us, will go through a pathway where from a startup you will eventually become a MSME, where you will eventually start asking for orders. You'll have to push the end users here to get orders, the orders that you are asking for, push more. Do not show them the faith that you are getting any money from VCs, because I am right now sort of voicing that there's no VC money coming in the Indian tech ecosystem anymore. Because if the US gets protectionist, then Delhi will definitely get protectionist in that sense. So no money coming in from that final route which was supposed to come. So again, Atmanirbharta again on the finances. Now in that entire scheme of thing, should we think about Series A, Series B, Series C? No, there's no need anymore. There's no need. Why do you block yourself with that Series A, Series B, Series C? No, there's no need anymore to do that. Just ask for orders in the classical way. Just try to educate your end users, right? Starting from MLAs, as you sir rightly pointed out. पुणे के MLA को क्या चाहिए वो पूछो. हाँ? बारामती के MLA को क्या चाहिए पूछो. बारामती वाला काम भी करेगा. हाँ, जिससे उसको वोट मिले. हाँ? कोंकण में क्या चाहिए, मराठवाड़ा में क्या चाहिए. Each of these regions have their own terrains, their own problems, their own issues. Problem areas are there. Give them out. If we are wanting some finance, or if you're wanting some orders from the state government. So cultivation is important. You guys are doing that. I think as an ecosystem, which we are all part of, you're all friends and colleagues in this entire effort, I think we should start now educating all these stakeholders in a big way. The central government is already your end user. Things will progress in the right direction. We'll go a bit, in the top down or lower status where end users need to be cultivated.
Point well taken. That's a great note to end the session.
Just one question, and that is coming from what Chaitanya you mentioned. Again, taking it ahead as to where is the money lying. There's a whole lot of Russian money lying in rupees here. Nobody has tapped that. Nobody has questioned that. And they can't take it away. So, again, MCCI, you guys have that responsibility. And maybe you'll become the pioneers, and where you'll say, ये इसका पैसे का करना क्या है? And if you get them, as what I had said, in joint ventures, then there's so much to do, there's so much to have. And I think you will be able to, and I think Atharva is the best person to tell you. You had your education there? Yes. Yeah, there you are. So, आपस में बैठ के खजाना ढूंढो ना. वो करने के बाद then become rich, so that we also become rich.
Thank you very much. Great panel. Really enjoyed it.
Fascinating conversation indeed. I request General Khandare to please present a memento to each one of them. Mr. Soumya Mishra.
Also a round of applause for Anirudh. Great.
Siddhesh Naik. Mr. Atharva. Tushar Zadav. Advait Kulkarni. And of course, Mr. Anirudh Rastogi. And I invite all the speakers on the stage for a quick group picture, please. Sir, please join us for a group photo. Thank you. So with this, we conclude our two-day event, the vendor development program along with the Dev Space Tech organized by MCCI along with the ministry. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to collaborating with